tweaks solved some problems but created other ones. Then it was just abandoned, and now they're trying to fix it up. So Blizzard is making it so there's no longer a cost to enter the Path of Ascension.
Good.
Oh,
good.
They're making it so you can just go and do the content.
You can do content in World of Warcraft. Fucking
Imagine
that's
if you
new.
could. Imagine if you could enjoy Horrific Visions without the fear of like, oh dear, if I make a tiny mistake, my resource will be lost, and I will have to do more world quests and things. Imagine. It just would have unleashed Horrific Visions to be fun. So that's great. And then the Medallions of Service are now only used in Ascension crafting, which I've actually done this system, but that you have, that's like the NPC gear stuff that you.
Yeah, that's for
right?
your. That is for your charms that increase your NPC stats for one time only, and that also is for crafting items that you unlock permanently to use in there. So that's what that's for. So that'll be, that should make that a lot cheaper if you aren't spending it all doing, actually getting in, which is nice. Very nice.
The next thing they've done is a nerf, but it's a nerf that makes sense when you understand some of the very top end of like the final bits of this. So there's a baseline 20% buff called Progressive Power that's active for all soulbinds in the Path of Ascension. It's active by default, but you can turn it off via a brazier of Progressive Power that's in the arena. Now, from what I understand, the tuning of some of the really top stuff here was extremely, extremely tight, and would get to the point where people would feel like they kind of have to like cheese. Do some creative use of game mechanics. And if you do a 20% buff to the soulbind, then that's enough that you no longer have to do the creative use of game mechanics to win.
Technically speaking, I would hope so, but I haven't actually bothered to spend enough time in here with all the entry costs to get up to the high level. But as far as I understand from Mandel talking about it, the idea is no, 20% might not be enough, because a lot of the cheese that was required wasn't just because it was like really super hard. There were some cases where it was, make one wrong step, you lose. But there were cases where the mechanics didn't work and you had to cheese around those.
Oh dear.
And a 20% buff might not be enough to actually solve that problem. Which, I'm not completely sure on that. It might be. They might have looked at it and determined 20% is enough. But it's certainly, this is a, I don't even know if this is a bandage fix. This is kind of a full body bandage fix. In the sense of, they have a lot of work to do. They kind of go, gotcha. let's throw a carpet over it and it'll sort of look okay, I think. Is generally the move here, I think.
It's that tricky thing for me where, I remember you saying, like, initially, I think we talked about this before, like, the first impression of this system is actually very good. Yep. And it's like some, fun, well-designed stuff. It's just, it seems like the guy who led making it was no longer at the company, and nobody really sort of picked up the slack fully to fix it. Or, maybe people did, but they weren't the person, who initially put in the work, and there's other things to do, and just it ends up not really being in the best state for a while. But it seems like at its core, there's a bunch of neat ideas in it. I mean, it certainly seemed appealing. It seemed to me as the most appealing of the four activities.
Absolutely.
Just because that's the sort of gameplay stuff that I guess I'd be a little bit more interested in. And, I hope they fix it up. One of the things with patch 9.1 is 9.1 did make it so that you would, as a hunter, quite a few cases, especially M+, want to go from Night Fae to Carrion. So it's the sort of thing where if they're going to be easing up the Covenant restrictions, and I just feel a little bit better about just playing a bit more fast and loose with that system, and I know that the Path of Ascension is in a state where it's like actually just there is some fun playable game, some fun side game to do and get some cool rewards for. If I know that, and I also know that like I vastly prefer the cosmetic gear for this faction, then I mean that's on top of Legion time locking, a thing that I know I could do and enjoy. And then certainly with something like the Path of Ascension, if I guess, it could be an evergreen feature in the game. I don't mean something to do forever and ever, but hopefully in the next expansion, I'll just go back, take control of one of those soul binds, and it's just kind of there as a thing to do.
There's no reason it shouldn't.
Yeah.
Kind of like Chromie time in a sense.
That's, I suppose, one of the reasons why I'd like to see more Chromie time development. I think Chromie time's just... I suppose it's funny because, you know, the game Deathloop that came out
Yes.
recently. Like, I'm not saying that Chromie Time is just like Deathloop, but it is some fun time loop shenanigans. And, you know, you go in, you get a little bit further, you learn a little bit more. Or, you know, you read a guide and completely ruin the experience for yourself in order to get a reward quickly, which maybe we can talk about extrinsic motivation later on. Because for me, you know, it was funny. I did loads of Chromie Time on the PTR, and I never bothered to do it in live because I guess clearly I was driven by really enjoying this time loop gameplay and not exactly go and get a reward. But certainly if they were adding more stuff to Chromie Time and more rewards to Chromie Time, like that would be sort of cool and exciting. In the same way as, you know, maybe they can take the path of ascension and do a version of it in the future that doesn't end up being scuffed. You know, I don't know. The friggin' Book of Mercenaries, but inside World of Warcraft. Maybe Lore Walker Cho. I mean, the Book of Mercenaries, it's like a thing in Hearthstone. Maybe Lore Walker Cho comes in and, you know, he's collecting the stories of the greatest heroes of Azeroth. So, you know, maybe you just get something like the Path of Ascension, but you play as Broxigar in a fight. Or something like that. And, you know, you could do that in a pretty cool manner, actually.
Almost certainly could, yeah.
I don't know, maybe that's a game idea at some stage. So other things, drop rates for all Path of Ascension crafting components have increased by 10%, and the Soul Mirror Shards can now drop from the Moss-worn Kyrian in the Maw.
Nice.
So, there's that. I have no idea what grinding those resources was like, to be honest.
So it wasn't too bad for like entry level stuff. It didn't take all that long if you're just gonna get into it, but if you needed to farm, because one of the problems was medallions of service was needed for entry. When it got really hard, you needed a huge amount of those medallions to actually play, and you know, because you had to iterate so many times to get it right. Then you would have to go and grind a load of stuff to craft, but that was a bit of a nightmare. But generally speaking, this is just a small kind of. There are less barriers, there's less friction to actually doing it now. That's what that ultimately accomplishes those changes. Which is fantastic.
Absolutely. Path of Ascension, going in a better direction. I really hope they get that in a good place, because it seems like that was a system that had so much potential, but unfortunately was just that bit held back.
Did Classic WoW live up to expectations? Aww. Okay, dude. Okay, dude. Wow. Those were the good old days. Fuck them, dude. We did have a little bit of fun in Classic, didn't we, guys? We did.
Classic. One of the most anticipated releases of a 15-year-old game. If you're unfamiliar with it, you may be thinking to yourself, why the fuck would several million people be losing their shit over the re-release of an old version of their game?
It's a good question.
And the answer to that is that long-running online games nowadays go through a lot of changes in their lifespan.
They do.
And before you know it, the feel of that old game you fell in love with
is dead.
May have already been wiped away. In
That's
contrast,
right.
you can always go back to your favorite single-player games and play them in pretty much the exact same state you remember them in. Classic's release intended to officially bring us this option. I won't go over every single positive and negative, since I don't want this video to last 5 hours, but instead I'll just quickly go over the most major points in my eyes. Although Classic has been amazing to play through, I can say that there's aspects in which it's shown to fall flat on its face in a pile of shit. Now, let's start with the good impressions.
Oh, that's where the 38 dislikes came from. You gotta activate the Classic Andes. The community. This is the bad part.
I have to say that Classic has succeeded in reviving the community in a state that I hadn't seen for a very long time. I've been invested in all kinds of WoW content for quite a while now, and honestly, WoW videos are what initially hooked me to even get into YouTube. Memes, videos, compilations, and anything like that felt so much more colorful when alive, and it really reminded me of things that the community was creating around 10 years ago or so. People were inspired to create entertainment simply for fun. Players just seemed like they cared about the game a lot more, and that was really cool to see.
It was
Apart
great.
from that, when talking about in-game, I appreciate how the game gives you good reasons to interact and group up with other players.
It does.
These interactions really give life to the
I
game.
do actually really think that in Classic WoW they gave a lot of there's a lot of like kind of videos and shit like that made about Classic WoW. And I think a lot of them are actually really good. Like, there weren't really the only BFA videos that were really being made were the videos that were like, oh, this is a compilation of corruptions being broken in Arena. It's good, man. It's good. I love being able to watch these, like, classic WoW videos. They're funny.
Game and your engagement with it, regardless if they're good or bad, which can lead to you having more memorable moments within the game.
Yep.
I can definitely say that has been the case for me, and during leveling alone, I've had some of the best fun in WoW in a long while. Whether it was an interaction with someone while waiting for a quest and getting ganked, or when I was questing with a group in an elite dwarven hold, and after we jumped down from the second floor on our way out, the warlock's pet went all around the back, pulling 6 elite dwarves to us, and got us and another group wiped.
Everybody's
all
dead.
These moments become memorable
That's
due
the
to the high
experience.
stakes on the line.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, creating memories like these is very important to me. You can also see how
That's
a lot
what
of
you
these
remember.
silly situations have inspired a lot of my videos. That also becomes more of a factor since it's much easier to familiarize yourself with the players on your realm and recognize them later down the line.
Yeah,
like,
you recognize
hey,
people.
it's that guy from Elwyn Forest when I was level 5. Now he's in my raid group, ninjaing on the... small world.
I like how it's a warrior doing it. He's like just kneeling down, just okay, alright. Okay, guys, next time, same time next week, boys. That was me. Yeah, that was me, exactly. And look, you gotta do what you gotta do.
These interactions that I talked about are further strengthened by the world's ability to immerse you. Classic really puts the RPG back in MMORPG. If you think about retail, it's always zip-zap from place to place all the time, which really hinders your ability to appreciate the in-game world.
I would agree
in
with
Classic, everything is in a much more slowed-down manner, which also makes the world feel that much larger. You barely have any flight paths, no mounts or heirlooms, you're broke as fuck, and sometimes you just have to run, often long distances too.
You know what sounds really dumb? I'm gonna give like a personal experience here. Is it like the other day I had to fly down to Booty Bay because I needed to get, I forgot why I had to go down there, but I went from Stormwind to Booty Bay, and just flying in Azeroth and just going from point to point felt really good. Because like in Shadowlands, like I really just teleport around. It's like I'm basically teleporting to different instances, but instead of a boss and like a dungeon being in the instance, it's like a world quest. It's like, okay, this is World Quest Boss 1 and World Quest Boss 2, and then I teleport out of that instance, and then I go to World Quest Boss 3 in the other instance, you know what I mean? And like being able to just travel around in the game it's special, man. I like it a lot. And you can teleport sometimes, like I think teleports are good, absolutely, they're fine. And I don't think Classic Roy has enough teleports, but like, it just got to the point, like in Shadowlands now, where I feel like you don't really ever go from zone to zone, like naturally. It's always like some form of like flight path where you can't really see where you're going. And it doesn't feel like there's a lot of continuity. Yeah, there's not the same level of continuity.
Along the way, you'll notice all the other players doing their own quests and stuff, all the cool zone landscapes, and the mobs existing around you, and especially when those amazing ambient soundtracks hit you.
Yeah.
Oh my god! That's when the game world really shines and you can truly appreciate it.
That's the good
and
music.
I really mean
Yeah.
this. Experiencing
Music
the world
matters a lot.
through the classic lens allows for whole new levels of immersion.
Yep.
To add to that, this immersion gains an extra layer, especially on PvP realms. While in retail you can avoid the other faction for the most part, especially through spamming Dungeon Finder all day, in Classic, once you're high enough level, you're basically forced to quest alongside the enemy faction. And while there's still a lot of passive players that'll just ignore you, there's still those that are ready to fuck you up once they see you, and that always keeps you on high alert. This sense of likely danger makes every task high risk, whether it's mining, questing, or running somewhere to meet up with a friend, and I honestly find it very thrilling. This was especially crazy during Phase 2, when
to me, like, I think I would have enjoyed this way more if I had the opportunity to... it gets old, though. It's not fun. Like, to me, I don't enjoy it, right? But one of the reasons why I don't enjoy it is because, like, everybody knows it's like, oh, it's Asmongold, right? So, like, the whole reason is like, oh, you know, it's like a personal thing for being a streamer. But like if I wasn't a streamer and I was just playing and not even having to deal with it at all, then yeah, I think I would probably enjoy it a lot more than I did. It's fun for the first 30 minutes, so it gets old. Yeah, exactly. It's not organic. It's not real. It's like just basically spurgery. Exactly. Why'd you pick a PvP server? I got peer pressured. That's what it was. And so yeah, it's the same as like in the game in general, right? It's like, is in a PvP server, would I play on a PvP server if I wasn't on stream? If I wasn't a streamer? No, I would not. Like, I just genuinely, like, I don't really find fun in it because I feel like 95% of world PvP interactions are imbalanced, favoring the person that initiates them. Like, the guy that's higher level is going to attack you. Like, you're probably not going to attack a guy that's, you know, 5 levels higher than you or 20 levels higher than you. And, like, if there's 3 groups of people or 3 guys in a group, and then there's you, there's a higher chance that, you know, they're going to try to kill you than you kill them. And it just ends up being the same thing every time. It's just not really as, it's not as enjoyable for me. And I know some people like it, and that's cool. It's great. I'm happy for them. But for me personally, I don't really play a game for that reason. Like, if I want to play against PvP, I'll do Arena or something like that. And I also, like, other people like it, that's fine. And I don't think they should get rid of PvP servers or anything like that, right? It's just not my cup of tea.
Everyone was scrambling to climb honor ranks, and there weren't any battlegrounds yet. Azeroth was an actual war zone back then.
Yeah,
another aspect of the game that really helps me connect with the character I play is the stronger identity and RPG feel of the classes. In retail, there's a lot of overlap in terms of what each one can do, like how most of them now have tons of damage mitigation, self-sustain, gap closers, burst damage overtime, crowd control, escape tools,
heals.
And that can really lose that special feeling in my opinion. Although in Classic some classes can perform way better than others, at least everyone feels like they have something unique to offer.
They can do something cool.
All in all, these have to be the biggest positives that left an impression on me. And now I'll move on to the negative impressions.
Well, that's one of the things that's a big thing with Classic is that certain classes suck at certain things. And that actually creates class identity. That's the main thing. Is yeah, the classes suck and that creates the identity in itself. Like, the weakness is what creates the identity.
Min-maxing, tryharding, elitism, gatekeeping, whatever you want to call it. Before Classic's release, I was really excited for the idea that it may be such a chill goof fest. Everyone doing whatever they want, not worrying about over-optimizing and just trying out fun builds. Like, why would we? We know the game in and out. When I saw cool things like Apes getting world first molten core a lot sooner than people expected, even with some people below level 60 in their group, I just felt like the theory was true. Endgame Classic content wasn't some impossible nightmare that you'd have to be extremely prepared for, but you could simply do well and roll it over if you played just well enough. But boy, was I wrong.
Oh, you're the wrong race? No invite. You're not a specific class/spec?
No invite. Red Paladin?
Nope. Delete him. That's a good one, boys.
Hilarious, wow.
Get him out of here.
Oh, guys, look at this fucking idiot choosing Red Paladin. Oh, wow. What a clown. Imagine getting this guy and having our run be a little bit more efficient.
True.
Funny.
True.
In all honesty, I think that we need to acknowledge the reality that not only the WoW community, but the gaming community as a whole has matured and changed throughout the years. Most of us are already used to most game mechanics and concepts. We're often pushed to find the most efficient ways to complete our tasks. We also have tons of resources like guides through which we can optimize our overall gameplay. Even then, I was still so surprised to see the sheer colossal amounts of min-maxing and tryharding in Classic. Nowadays, especially on smaller realms,
I feel like it's so weird that people complain about that. Like, I feel like it's really kind of weird that people complain about that because, like, in my guild, for example, we don't require... No, I don't complain about min-maxing. Because it's too far. Yeah, exactly. So, like, just don't join raids if you're, don't join a raid like that if you don't want to min-max. It's literally that simple. I think a lot of the complaining about min-maxing is people that are mad that the entire rest of the player base doesn't want to play the way they want to. Like, of course not. Why would you want to play with somebody who's intentionally making themselves worse? It's like, imagine playing with a Fury Warrior in like retail WoW that's only using one weapon. Why the fuck would you want to do that? Why? Why would you want to do that? Like, why would you even for a second indulge that idea? So an arms warrior. Exactly, they suck. That's the whole point that I'm making. Yes, exactly. That's 100% it. Min-maxing wasn't a thing then. That is so fucking wrong. It was so much of a thing back then. Classic content isn't difficult enough to warrant it. No, it's not about being difficult enough. It's about the person having the fucking audacity to handicap themselves and then ask everybody else to make up for it. It's selfish. Play what you need to play, bring what you need to bring into the raid, and if you can't pull your own weight, don't expect to get brought. If everybody else is performing at 90% and you're sitting around at 30, then yeah, of course people don't want to fucking deal with you.
If you try to go out in the world and level as normal, maybe search for a dungeon group, well, all I gotta tell you is, good fucking luck. Because almost all other people leveling will be getting boosted
Everybody
dungeons
gets boosted.
24/7. Why would someone spend an hour or two forming a group and doing a dungeon
If you can
with
just buy a boost.
when they can simply pay a mate like 7 gold and sit AFK while they go around and pull the whole dungeon and area down in 1 minute?
That's what I did.
You might as well be playing one of those
that's what I
cheap-ass
did.
mobile games where you pay a currency and simply wait for like 10 hours for your dumb task to be completed. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, the boosting thing does really kind of suck, but again, it's what people want to do. And somebody said, what do you call it? Somebody said that if I didn't play a warrior, would I feel the same way? I would. That's why I was thinking about re-rolling or, like, basically, I don't really want to play Fury in my raids because I feel like Fury is useless. Like, Fury Warrior doesn't bring anything special. It's a shittier version of a hunter. Like, I'll either play arms or prot. Like, I don't want to play a spec that's dog shit. Yeah. And if all my specs were bad, then I probably would just play a warlock or something. Yeah, I don't want to play something that's bad. Absolutely not. Fury is the best DPS? What, in TBC? Oh, sorry. I was talking about in TBC, right? Yeah, in TBC, yeah, it's warlocks and hunters are just a little bit better. Fury's
I also
good,
want
though.
to clarify that
It's
I'm
good.
not sitting here trying to tell you that you're playing the game wrong if you min-max and try hard.
I like min-maxing.
Not at all. That's fine. People choose that gameplay style often. The problem is how rampant this seemed through my eyes, and for those of people that I've talked with about this. Like, God forbid someone didn't complete a min-maxing task to save you 10 seconds on your raid run. I even feel like a lot of people playing like this aren't even happy about it, but are instead pushed and influenced into it. Like, they feel like they have to do it because everyone else is doing it. It seemed like a lot of the community was a part of some inexistent esports organization constantly racing each other for world firsts. Like, why? Some people that decided to just fuck around with Classic went ahead and did silly shit like clearing Onyxia with 3 people or only
that was
with
cool.
druids. Just for the fun of it. Why does fucking Terry, your guild newbie, have to be screamed at for not raid logging with his world buffs ready when he just wanted to play a bit more on his main this week?
That was a huge problem. That was actually such a big problem then. Is like people that had to they had to log off and not play their main. Like if they had done the chrono boon thing a lot earlier, I think that would have made like such a massive positive improvement to Classic. Yeah, it would have been such a huge positive improvement to Classic. And yeah, again though, like Terry doesn't have to be in that guild though. Again, it's like you're blaming other people for not wanting to play with you. It's weird, like that mentality, the mentality of, you know, oh well, let people play what they want, let people do what they want. The reason why Blizzard implemented like Dungeon Finder and Raid Finder is because of those people. It's because people wanted to do things and play their own way, and other people didn't want to play with them. That's exactly why they added it.
Odd to me. That being said, they have recently added
snowflake
a completely
mentality,
new
exactly.
item to Classic WoW, the Chrono Boon Displacer, which lets you save your current world buffs, and then you can reapply them at a later time. This is honestly a good way to stop all those crazed world buff maniacs from shooting themselves in the foot by only raid logging and shaping the whole meta around it. And this is when we reach Classic's main disgrace. All the farming spots, once filled with several players, now littered with bots. Almost everywhere you went, they were there.
I like how they're all wearing the same armor and keyboard turning around. The bot problem is huge. And I think the reason this problem, the classic WoW thing, it has nothing to do with the players, okay? Except for like, yeah, players did buy the gold. That's why they're there in the first place. But like, that's gonna happen no matter what. The bot problem is 100% on Blizzard.
All day, obvious as fuck too. You see those 7 guys farming lions and bears all day in the main
Yeah, how
road between
convenient.
Tarn Mill and the human farms? Yeah,
Bots.
those are bots. They're odd straight line movement and then changing rotations.
What's so crazy is they programmed bots to do some of the different the sale runs, like the boosting runs. Like they programmed bots. I've seen bots that were programmed to do the ZG runs.
Make it painfully clear. People thought it was a momentary thing, the cheaters seeing a moment of weakness in Blizzard's defense, that they will soon get what's coming to them. Right? Look, there's no way to know anything about Blizzard's internal affairs, but even after executing ban waves, where they stated that over 70,000 bots or so had been banned, there was still no change in my eyes. I could still see the bots all the time. Anyway, with time and little to no change, things were starting to get desperate.
You seen the video on the WoW subreddit? Yes. Yeah, druids, now whenever they get targeted by another player, they are programmed to go into stealth, so the player can't actively file a report on them. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that fucking crazy?
And this is when I started noticing that we've entered some weird kind of a dystopian phase of Classic. Players with time started accepting the bots as a part of the game, seeing as not much was changing, as they began to attempt
they don't care
fixing the issue themselves by figuring out silly ways through which to mess with the bots. With TBC Classic coming up, I decided to make a fresh character and just play a bit. I was having fun, just doing some quests and running around, and eventually I got to Bloodhoof Village. And the first thing I see there was a stack of 10 to 15 Tarn bots, spawn camping, a chain resurrecting Night Elf bot. And that's it. I mean, I was fairly speechless, and this was a really hard-hitting moment for me at the time. I honestly just stopped and thought to myself,
what?
Man, why am I even playing this game anymore?
Bro, poop, oh my, bracket, oh my god. So they're botting bracket oh what is this? Dude, it was so, bro, it's literally Skynet. It gets to the point to where, like, you have so many bots, you have to make your own bots to fight back against their bots. It's like back in Mists of Pandaria, I genuinely believe, because, like, botting was so bad back then, I genuinely believe that there were battlegrounds that happened, there were no real players. Like, 10 bots on one team, 10 bots on another team. And the Zyback video, yeah, exactly. And the best part about that is one of the guys in the Zyback video was a friend of mine, and I met the guy in real life. He's a police officer now, but back then he was just a bot. And I don't know why, like, I really mean this. I genuinely do not know why Blizzard can't do something about it. Because it's like, how is it that players are able to obviously and easily identify these things all the time, but Blizzard can't have somebody whose job it is to do the same thing? They make money off of it? No. Because if they ban them, they have to make a new account. They make more money off of that.
I really just felt disappointed. But goes without saying, I encountered many more bots along the way. This got me thinking, how can they not get one GM, to just fly around Azeroth for a couple of hours?
Yeah.
I mean, they're clearly painfully obvious. It's not like I'm out looking for them, not at all. I'm just trying to play my game, but I can't help keep encountering them. Obviously, they know they're safe just botting in the open.
This happened at prime time on a Wednesday evening. So it's not as if this is a hidden operation or that there's any fear of punishment from Blizzard. Whoever's running this operation knows that Blizzard can't or won't do anything about the severe botting epidemic.
Is that your pal? What's this here? Is that your pal in Karanos enjoying our work? This is really great work they're putting in here. That's a funny one, isn't it? Yeah, he's got the little happy face. That's good. Yeah, this is what people do. They got big plans for TBC too. Yeah, and they're going to be able to do the plans because Blizzard just doesn't really give a shit. That's the thing. Not worth resources, dying game. Bro, it's always been like this. It was like this in Wrath, whenever the game was the most popular than ever. Like, it's always had this problem. This is not a, managed decline or whatever. No, it's because Blizzard doesn't give a shit. That's the whole reason. It's because they don't care. They've never cared.
Do anything about the severe botting epidemic.
This should tell you how many there is of them. It almost makes me think like they don't want to even bother banning them. What is
the
it,
point?
Blizzard? Is it because of the subscription money they bring in?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll now give you a pitch for a cool and helpful addition to your game.
Okay.
When I was younger, I used to play this free-to-play MMO called Rohan Online. It had some pay-to-win stuff in the in-game shop, but it wasn't anything too crazy, just some experience boosts and stuff.
Yeah.
And later down the line, the game started dying out, and some bots were starting to run around a lot more often. So the greedy devs thought of an ingenious solution.
Okay,
Two
what was it?
birds with one stone.
What's the
They
first stone?
simply added a new in-game store item called the Hunter Kit. Ooh, sounds sweet, huh? What does this
Wait,
Hunter
do you
Kit
get to
do, you
report
wonder?
people?
Well, you might have already figured it out. Yeah, it just brings up an inbuilt menu for botting. That's it. They straight up added a botting software to the game.
Okay. I'll be right back. This is actually smart. I'm impressed by this. This is great. They literally just, you make your own bot. Perfect. Level 58 boosts or that? Yeah. Wait, yeah, no, you're right. Level 58 boosts are basically buying botting. Holy shit. Wow.
Which you could purchase. Blizzard, my friend, this will make a great addition to your future classic in-game shop.
Yep.
Nobody will complain about the bots anymore, because guess what? They will be a
Adventurer's
standard part
Manual.
of the game, and you'll make lots of money. Come on.
True.
You know you want to. You can't help yourself, can you? It will even work so well in retail too, seeing how rampant those Boomkin bots are.
Yep.
I think that if Blizzard really wanted to deal with this, they'd figure out a way to make some inbuilt anti-cheat code in the system itself. I'm sure they know all too well that a ban wave once per year won't do jack.
What they need to do is they need to have a deputy program. And Blizzard needs to have like a training program that players can go through to identify bots. And then those players get a tabard on it, and the tabard has a police badge on it. And then those players that do the reports on those different people will then have those reports escalated more quickly to Blizzard, and then Blizzard will be able to deal with the problems more so in real time. So number one, people will do this for free. And on top of that, they don't have to pay anything. They pay one guy, right? You just have the police chief. Yeah, you pay the police chief. He's the one that works at Blizzard, but all the deputies are just out there working for free. It's fucking simple. This is fucking brilliant. Like, I should tweet this at Blizzard. This is a really good idea. And the thing is, like, I would do it. Like, everybody would do it, right? And then, like, if you put in a bunch of bad reports, you could have, like, employee reviews or peer reviews where, like, you remove people from the police force that are just stupid or not doing their job very well. Like, it would self-regulate itself, because, like, anybody knows, like, give people the smallest amount of power, even if it's not even real power, and they'll fight over that to the death.
Shit, and stronger measures need to be taken. I obviously don't understand how these things work too well, but a good example is how they're currently dealing with the multi-boxers. That has really seen huge improvement for the better, and I want to see similar impactful actions being taken against the cheaters. Now, all of this ties into another big issue in Classic, which is buying and selling gold. If you're unfamiliar with the recent trend of GDKP runs in Classic, it's basically when several people set up a raid group and invite people who can then bid on items that drop with gold. And you can see how someone buying gold from a third-party website with 2 clicks can impact this little situation,
Yep.
Not sure how you guys see this, but
there's a lot of people who buy gold. They buy gold with real money, and then they go to these GDKP raids, and they outbid everybody else because they've got a lot of fucking money. Blizzard, they're not trying. Like, I think GDKPs are totally fucking fine, but whenever you have everybody that's getting their gold through botting, then it's completely fucking different.
My eyes, this is pretty much pay to win.
Yeah, blatantly breaking
you want
TOS,
that Greasel Dawn of Ruin?
Greasel.
Well, good luck. If Mr. Fat Stacks over there decided to treat himself this week and has bought around 400,000 gold on a website and is ready to throw it all down, well, that's it.
You're getting
that item literally sold for 200,000 gold in Classic.
That's so ridiculous.
200,000.
That's insane.
Classic, not retail. Bro, I don't even know if I've even ever gotten more than 700 gold to my name.
That's
Jesus
crazy.
Christ. I was actually shocked to realize this was a thing to begin with, and I think Blizzard must step in on issues like this.
Well, they're not going to, because it would require work. And that's the problem. That's why they don't do it. I wouldn't even pay 200k in retail. I mean, the thing is, like, Gressel's like the best item in the game, right? So, like, of course you're going to do that. But, like, that's like thousands of dollars. Like, I don't know. So, like, if a WoW token, let me just think about this, right? So, if a WoW token is, let me do the math. How much does a WoW token trade for in Classic? It's like 500 gold, right? Let's just assume it's 500 gold. If it's 200,000 divided by 500 times 20, $8,000. So that's literally $8,000. Wow. That's nuts, man. Absolutely fuck yeah. Only $8,000, guys. It's only 8 grand. We could just buy, dude, if you buy now, you'll be able to get ready for the patch.
Again, you can see how bots tie in.
Oh, bro, dude, it was at that time, it was only 3,000. It was only 3,000 then, man. It wasn't that much. It was only $3,000.
As it's easy to assume they farm most of the gold for those websites. Now, I do think some changes have to be made in order to balance out all these current day trends that are taking away from the game's experience, as mentioned earlier. Now, of course, in the very beginning of Classic,
TBC is gonna have this too.
Before it even came out, people started becoming very adamant on the idea of...
And here's why it's going to be even worse about TBC. Here's why TBC is going to be even worse. Because you're going to have people... Because, like, in Classic, there's no real competitive content. Like it's speed running, who gives a fuck, right? I mean, that's just like a third-party thing. In like PvP, like there's Grand Marshal, that's not really competitive. It's like having better gear or anything isn't competitive. But guess what happens whenever somebody spends real money? They join a Black Temple GDKP, they buy a Warglaive for $4,000, and then they take it into Arena. Like, that's 100% what's going to happen, and then it's going to affect everybody. It affects the competitive, like the one thing that you don't want this shit to affect, it's going to affect it the most. That's whenever people are going to spend the most money, because everybody wants to pay to win. But whenever winning matters, they're going to pay even more.
Changes, and honestly, I couldn't blame them. The game was already going to be in a state that I knew I'd enjoy far better than retail, and I honestly couldn't trust Blizzard with integrating changes, since their design philosophies seem much more different nowadays and wouldn't really fit old WoW in my eyes. But if they include small, well-thought-out additions to the game that wouldn't interfere with the overall feel, and instead amplify it, then it could be very beneficial. Lastly, regarding the negative points I spoke about, I want to reiterate that I'm not throwing the blame for these things on the more frontline employees of Blizzard, like GMs and whatnot, and I'm not throwing all the blame on the community as well. Even though I think a portion of
it's the people that make the decisions. Like, it's not the GM's fault. I mean, the GMs want to deal with it. It's just that there's, like, you know, fucking Bobby snapped his fingers and half of them disappeared. And now they're stuck doing the same amount of work. So yeah, big fucking surprise that it takes a lot longer for things to happen.
Chill out a bit with striving for perfection all the time, and, you know, learn to be a bit more accepting and open. This all comes down to the higher-ups at Blizzard that are responsible for more impactful decisions, and they're the ones that are letting us down. If they want all this to not end up as the burning dumpster, they have to start caring for the game better.
That's a good one.
Continue updating it with small changes that would help bring out the real classic feel of the game in the current day. Although I'm no longer as excited for TBC Classic as I was for the original Classic, due to the negatives I mentioned earlier. And among...
I think there's a lot of things that people are just like, TBC, I feel like, has done everything possible to make people not excited for it. Between like the Dark Portal Pass, the high pricing, releasing it super fast, like cutting short with the pre-patch that people are looking forward to, tons of stuff like that, like not giving people time to level their characters. It just seems like a problem.
Other reasons.
Other reasons.
I'm still sure I'll have lots of fun playing it, even for a bit. So I'm at least looking forward to that. And on that note, guys, thanks for watching. And I'll see you next time. /kiss. See you.
Okay.
Also, I'm currently live on Twitch and hosting a transmog competition, so feel free to come hang out.
Look, I like the video. I think the video was really good. I think you brought up a lot of good points. The min-maxing thing, I know that's something that, like whenever people saw apes clearing it.
When I saw a cool thing.
Yeah, when apes cleared, Ragnaros' lair in the first week or something like that, I think a lot of people were kind of upset to see that, etc. 100%. A number of other things were definitely problematic for Classic WoW. I think that overall, Classic WoW was a great game, and it was really fun, and Blizzard did a lot of things right, but there were a number of things that Blizzard just kind of let go wrong because they wanted to... It's not because they wanted to do anything, it's because they didn't care. Like, that's really why. Like, they just didn't give a shit. And it's like, yeah, the Dispel meta, like, that lasted for a year. Like, why would something like that last for a year? And like, all of these decisions that Blizzard has made in the past, like, they really put in as little effort as possible as Classic, and sometimes it feels like it was almost like malicious compliance. Like, they would do something that they thought the player base would want to, like, spite them. Like, that's the way that I felt sometimes.
There is a global conspiracy by opioid killers and healthcare giants to get you sick, keep you sick, and charge you money. Does that sound like a terrifying headline? Of course it does. It's meant to grab your attention. The problem is, it's true. The very PR agents involved in the opioid crisis in helping Pardue, the company that was primarily behind the opioid crisis, get out of trouble, are now involved in getting the healthcare system in the United Kingdom, the National Healthcare Service, into the hands of United Healthcare Group, an American insurance company. So what's happening in America with your healthcare, with you being overcharged for your healthcare, will soon be happening here in the United Kingdom. If you're a British citizen, you should be terrified. If you're an American citizen, you should be furious. Dr. Bob Gill, a regular old family doctor, here talks to us about how this plan, how this conspiracy has unfolded, the way that the government colluded with private giants, the way that the media lied to people to ensure that the NHS, a treasure of the British people, could be taken from them and given to profiteering, in the case of the opioid crisis, very irresponsible people that you might be able to term killers if you think that doing something that leads to someone to die makes you a killer. This conversation originally took place on my podcast, Under the Skin, available from Luminary. If you want to hear the whole conversation, and especially if you've got Apple, you can get it anywhere in the world. There's a subscription fee, but there's also a meditation podcast on the same platform, not to mention Dave Chappelle. Give it a listen. Stay to the end of this video because I've got more questions for you, more things I need you to understand, and more things I want to hear from you.
It was actually one of the conversations I had with a local GP leader who I described what was happening to my patients. And he said three things to me. He said, "You're too sensitive. Your patients are unlucky. And don't worry, you're not paying for any of this." Now I thought if that is the response to people in positions of power and responsibility to protect public health provision, then clearly they're selecting the wrong people for the job, and I need to do something. So that's when I set about trying to get involved in campaign groups, learning about what's going on, learning about health economics, learning about policy, and discovering that this hadn't started in 2012 when the Health and Social Care Act was passed, because that was a major progression of privatisation. This had started decades before, and in fact it dates back 1988, I would say, was a key date. It's when Oliver Letwin MP and John Redwood MP were commissioned to write a piece on exactly how you repurpose a public service to an American-style insurance system without people noticing. So it was a revelation to me, how far this process had gone.
Is that written? Sorry to interrupt you. Is that written down somewhere? Is that something you can see, like how we can turn the NHS into an American-style health insurance system without anyone noticing? Is there a sort of a paper trail for that?
Absolutely. So his document, published by the Centre for Policy Studies, is on the net. I can send you a link to it, and it summarised the key steps. There were 5 steps. Step 1: establish the NHS as an independent trust. Well, that's what the 2012 Act did. It separated the Department of Health out to a new quango called NHS England, which essentially is a privatisation board stuffed with people from the private sector who've gone through the revolving door and now wear an NHS badge, busily trashing the NHS. Increased joint ventures between the NHS and the private sector. I'll give you one example: private finance initiative, where the public went to private banks and financiers and said, lend us some money, we want to build new hospitals. Now, there was never a need to do that. There is a magic money tree. The government discovered it when it gave out the test and trace contracts that I mentioned earlier. We could have funded this through public borrowing, but they chose to get into bed with the private sector and have saddled the NHS with a massive financial millstone. I'll give you the figures. We've borrowed 11 billion. You know how much we're going to pay back? 88 billion. At the end of which we won't own the hospitals. This is a financial scam on a monumental level. So that's one example of public-private partnerships. Step 3, extend the principle of charging. Now we've set up a whole charging system for immigrants and health tourists to claim back money which wouldn't even cover the administrative cost. So why has the government introduced an expensive system of charging, setting fees, collecting the money, if the amount you collect wouldn't even cover the admin cost? Because they want to extend it to everybody. Step 4, a system of health credits. This is called at the moment personal health budgets. It's a mechanism which they'll be using to keep the most expensive patients away from going to private insurance at the moment, because they'll get rejected. But what the NHS will become is a tax-funded budget for you, which becomes transferable to a private insurance company to make up for those services that the NHS no longer provides. Because that's part of the strategy, to chip away at the universality and comprehensiveness of the NHS. Interestingly, the company that is drawing up the services to cut is that company I mentioned earlier, McKinsey, the advisors to Purdue Pharma, who were paying out a fine now of $600 million to settle without admitting any liability. So that's 4 steps. Step 5, a national insurance scheme. So every individual in this country will have, let's say, a budget of £2,000 to £3,000 attached to their name, which is is the equivalent of Medicare and Medicaid. Public funding to provide basic level of healthcare, which you can top up if you can afford to. So the 5 steps are there, and what the current bill does, it puts into law what has been already going on for over a decade, because these companies aren't going to arrive sometime in the future. They're already embedded within the NHS. There was something in 2006 called World-Class Commissioning, where United Health, the Big Four accountancy firms, McKinsey, were all brought in to give us their friendly advice on how to run the NHS, and they are embedded within the fabric of the NHS now. They're running it now. And what the new legislation does, it formally hands over the NHS to them.
It's interesting when you use the example of the involvement of a company like McKinsey, who have been involved in advising Purdue around the opioid crisis that created 500,000 deaths and meant that there were payouts of 600 million, because it shows you what the incentives are, what the ideology is, and that you would think in a sane world that would be prevented immediately if the incentives of government were really to serve people, whether you're talking about the United States or our country. You would not involve such a mendacious organisation that exists solely to mask the malfeasance of organisations such as those which we are describing, and the malevolent intentions of projects such as this one. And so you believe that the power of organisations such as these that we're describing, whether it's sort of groups like McKinsey or the United Health, whoever them dudes were, like that their power transcends national boundaries and certainly transcends apparent political divisions, in so much as you cannot envisage the current Labour Party or Democrat or Republican Party ever opposing this kind of endeavour. Is that? Would you say that? Like, would the Labour Party? What are they going to vote for this bill?
What we're seeing is performative theatre. So when you have a 80 MP majority, it doesn't really matter what the opposition says or does. Even if the Labour Party totally vote against this bill, the point is they are not informing the public. There is no public discourse about the imminent capture of the NHS by American multinational corporations, particularly the insurance industry. There is no discussion about this. It's all about, let's spend a bit more money here and we'll spend 1 billion more than you will. That is not where this debate needs to be. A genuine Labour Party that wants to put a stop to this would be explaining where the threat is, and that's not what we're hearing.
What do you think we should do?
Fortunately, in the case of the National Health Service, somewhat due to Dr. Bob Gill's brilliant work, you can see his film on YouTube. It's called The Great NHS Heist. We still have a chance to save the National Health Service, but it's going to take solidarity. It's going to take opposition. It's going to take non-violent protest and serious opposition. In the rest of the world, it shows that there's still a need for, I suppose, a global confederacy of intercommunicating groups with the same ideals and principles that refute centralisation at the level of government and be that technocratic authority or the corporate authority of large transnational entities. But that's just my idea. What's your idea? That's much more important. Look at you collectively, what you know, all that stuff I don't know. Hit me up with it in the comments below. If you like this, give it a like. Subscribe if you don't subscribe already. Put on your notification bell. Apparently that absolutely ensures you get to see my content. But to be even more sure than that, sign up to my mailing list at russellbrand.com. And if you enjoyed this video, have a look at this saucy little fella. Look at it there, flaunting itself. And if you need to meditate now, who can blame you? Try this out. This will help you come down, connect, access the infinite. Stay with us.
Okay. Shadowlands intro questline is skippable. They've done it.
You know,
I have several questions, but...
Yeah, so it's funny. I don't think this is new. Let me just think for a second. I'm fairly sure I did it when the 9.1.5 PTR went up straight away, because I immediately went and started Threads of Fate on level 48 Shaman. Yeah, no, this isn't actually new.
Did it only hit the PTR notes recently?
Yes, but it's been in PTR since live. Unless maybe they turned it off very quickly after But as soon as the PTR went up, I went and tried, because I wanted to try Threads of Fate in Torghast, and I did that on the 48 Shaman. But I did that by skipping the Mo intro. So I think this isn't actually new, but, you know, it's now codified as something that's actually happening, and there's details on it now. So.
Yeah, so to do those details, basically, all characters can now choose to skip the introductory Shadowlands quest line that takes place in the Maw by speaking to Whitemane or Nazgrim after accepting the Chilling Summons quest. Now, please note that to enable this skip, you must have logged into a level 60 character who has completed the Maw introduction. For those who've already begun the intro questline, Jaina Proudmoore in the Forlorn Respite Cave will now offer to skip the rest of the intro after the A Flight from Darkness quest is completed and before leaving the cave. So you could still get stuck in there, but the point basically is you can skip the damn thing if you want to, which is great. Now, the big question that I have is, this is a genuine question, I'm very confused why it was not like this from launch, when it was like this from launch in Battle for Azeroth. And I believe the Legion Broken Shore skip, was that there at launch, or did that just come in decently quick?
I think that came in decently quick. I don't remember being there at launch.
Yeah, so look, it's really quite strange that it wasn't there. It could just have been the situation though that they had to delay this expansion by a month. They were maybe just crunching towards it, and they didn't get around to doing it. I have no idea. Like, it's the sort of thing where there's lots of stuff about, like, the state that your character is in as it pertains to the world from a technical sense. I don't know if whatever way this was done, there was, like, some weird hitch that was a blocker, and now they've got the engineering time to work around it. Because it is very strange. It's like this at launch.
Yeah. So if I had to offer some sort of hypothesis, it would be that I imagine there's a load of stuff, like the Threads of Fate probably required level 50 or something like that. Or required quest completion there, and they just literally had to do a whole bunch of really annoying work to make sure all the flags were set correctly, and they kind of just didn't have the time to do it. That's what my general hypothesis is. Obviously there could have been something with, like, but I imagine it's something they actually have in, not like an engineering problem, like you said, but close enough in that it needs someone to understand how all of the quest flow actually works in terms of permissions and requirements and prerequisites, and flick all those to the correct way, which is, honestly, I don't know anything about how they develop the game, like in terms of what tools or how that stuff's set up internally, but I suspect that would be very annoying and take a decent portion out of someone's day.
Yeah, and it's the sort of thing, there's only so many someones with so many days, working on the project, and if everything is behind and a complete shit show, then you could see how all of the nice-to-haves end up falling by the wayside in favor of the need-to-haves, or the game won't work.
Yep.
So, yes, there's that. Right, WoW boosting exposed, the multi-million-dollar industry Blizzard profits from, because, look, this is probably driving a lot of WoW token sales. It's really, really interesting. We went into this, we didn't want to just do some random op-ed hit piece. We wanted to actually understand this from the perspective of the boosters and the boosties and the communities and the people who, aren't happy with what boosting is doing in the game. Now, certainly, Part 2, which is coming next week, is, it's definitely being very critical of what boosting is doing within the game, but not in a way that's really blaming boosters or boosties, because really we see that as just all symptoms of issues. So that's a big one. Then, this is messed up, the 10 worst jobs in Azeroth. We just wanted to do horrible histories in World of Warcraft, and it's funny, I saw some loon on Twitter who thought that this was like a super negativity, like, hit piece video in the game. I'm like, what? We're talking about a gnomish sweatshop because it's a really fun, odd little story, an odd quirk of the game. So, look, man, 10 worst jobs in Azeroth, because there's really just funky stuff going on in the WoW lore that is a bunch of fun, and certainly Goblin Sappers and their like do not get a great time. Basically, fuck all anyone watch this video. I think one of the reasons is that, all sort of World of Warcraft interest is a bit of an all-time low. But certainly, if you've ever liked Azeroth, I would recommend giving this one a shot. John puts so much work into it, and it does kind of break our hearts whenever, John and Laced as well. Whenever, and Jared leading the script, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
yes, just breaks our heart whenever. Yeah, I don't know. Whenever the stuff we're actually passionate about and really want to make sort of gets hit by everything else. So there's that. If you watch something after this, watch that. And chances are you probably haven't, because 8 people watch that. I mean, not literally 8, but compared to what usually sort of goes on the channel. And then for news, a little bit of talk about Diablo 2 Resurrected. Seems like it's that thing where, it's like the actual game and remaster is great. Asterisks, bugs, things not fixed from beta, so maybe we need to do a follow-up there. There actually might be a little bit more to cover, but sort of our initial thoughts. Going deep into, SEC. Touched on that earlier. If you want a more deeper dive, check it out there. Same goes for the Overwatch 2 Big Boss Man going. Then, Deathloop. We just found that to be interesting because there was... it's good. What's in this video has led to me enjoying Deathloop a lot more than if I think I would have played the natural way I would have played a game like that. So it's, Matt, what you said definitely allowed me to be more in sync with the designers. Good. And I think get an experience that is closer to what the critics have said. Certainly for a lot of players, there's stuff going on there. China, we're not going to shy away from when they're doing bullshit. They're basically just trying to, launch a whole thing on effeminate men, which that's, think about what that could be the gateway to.
I'd rather not, but sure.
Yeah. Battlefield delay happening. Diving into that, what could be going on. If you know anything about me, Battlefield 2, Battlefield 2142, even playing a little bit of Vietnam in the LAN center.
Nice.
Coleraine, sadly the LAN center is now gone. Splitgate, 100 mil. They've got 100 mil. They're going to be trying to do some real big shit with that 100 mil, so pretty interesting. And then, Paradox, they had their drama. The new CEO actually got in and straight up admitted to, a professional whoopsie. And, going into that, seeing what is up in the situation. So, there's a quick summary of our content. Of course, though, for the news channel and stuff, we've got, we recorded a bunch today. We've got things coming. Excited for people to get their hands on the Kenna video because we feel like that game was a bit hard done by and perhaps just revealed some issues with the game review process. I mean, you compare an 1,100 word, review with, say, an in-depth one from what somebody could be doing in YouTube, and it's like, man, the difference is pretty big. Yep. And also, I actually just think that YouTube is fundamentally a better medium for a game review because
of course it is.
You can see the game.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Some stuff.
Surprisingly enough, that might be an important part of it.
May just be. So that is it. That is it for us today. We're very busy. Soon I'll tell you what Thomas is doing on Tuesday whenever I'm able to, because it's really fucking cool. I never saw this coming, and it's cool and exciting. And I mean, certainly for him as, maybe for him as a playwright and play director, before doing all of this. I think it's probably a pretty darn cool moment. Moment for him and absolutely and people. And man, there's also things happening with us in the content space, non-game, and then in the game space. Basically, it's all happening at once.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've got a mighty period of time coming up.
Yeah, and goddamn, if we are going to launch something in the studio tour, there's a little bit of sprucing up I really want to do. That's so
to be fair, it's a little nicer in here than it was a while ago.
Matt did a bang up job here. It was like I went for an hour and a half, I came back, and boom, the place is so much more less of a literal death trap. Because I think if you've ever worked in a studio, like around enough cameras and lighting gear, no matter what, they always descend into a death trap within like 0 time.
Absolutely.
So
just before we go, we have one question that I think you would like to answer.
Oh, let's go.
Simon M. Best SG1 episode?
Oh.
Putting you on the spot here a little bit.
I think I know. No, I do know what my answer is.
Yeah.
Heroes. Thing of Heroes. It's the two-parter. It's the two-parter that got them the Emmy, I think. There's a character death, and it is like really well handled. The one where the Vietnam investigative reporter is like there as one of the characters. Oh my god, I cannot believe this is happening. Yeah, I just think that was an incredible SG1 episode.
Great.
Incredible. If I was to pick one, But, you know, there are lots of fun ones. And then we could talk about Wormhole Extreme, where there'd be some... Wormhole Extreme is basically where SG-1, like, basically documents leak, and it leaks to a TV studio, who then basically makes a fake in-universe SG-1 knockoff, where all the characters are like, that's my job? How did this leak? What is going on?
Oh, that's class.
Man, yeah.
That's great. Yep.
Well,
apparently you got the wrong answer, because everyone says Time Loop.
Well, okay, no, Time Loop's like maybe number 2 for me, or maybe number 1. Basically, ship. Big shipping episode. SG-1 is one of those things where there... I mean, no, everybody knows that there's a ship between Carter and O'Neill.
Yeah.
Everyone knows this thing. But it's the sort of thing where the show... There's a bit where they just kind of suspend the ship, and not suspend it, but, you know, they don't really cover as much in episodes, and that's kind of because I think a bit of Richard Dean Anderson, like, just for the sake of his personal life, and, you know, like wanting to spend more time with his daughter, step up in the show a little bit more. But both of the actors have said that they would like to think that once, you know, the limitations of professionalism within the military were no longer applying to them, that perhaps those two characters would engage in some relationship.
Excellent.
Which for the SG-1 fans, I think almost all of them would be improved.
Excellent. Well, I think that is where to end it. Thank you very much for tuning in today.
Yeah.
Had a lot of fun.
Yeah, love a good Time Loop episode.
And,
oh yes, it was on Deathloop.
Yep.
Loop game.
Yep, absolutely.
We have a Time Loop game design, we just haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
We've done a prototype yet.
Yep, absolutely.
So, yes, anyway, right. Okay, cool. Goodbye. Have a great day. And, yeah, I mean, somehow if you can tolerate seeing more of us, there is in fact more content out there. If not, then I hope you enjoyed it. So, yeah.
World content and raids. The Aldor accepted Marks of Kil'jaeden, In this episode of the Unknown Side of WoW, we'll be going over the Old Gods and the many things connected to them. We all know kobolds, and we all know their famous line, "You know, take candle." But do you know why they are so protective of their candles? Well, it first requires me going over quickly a little theoretical experiment called the 5 Monkeys experiment. 5 monkeys are put into an enclosure with a ladder in the center and bananas hanging over it. If any monkey was trying to go to the top, they would all be sprayed with cold water. Because of this, the monkeys learned that no one is allowed to go up because bad stuff will happen. Then the researchers would replace the monkeys one at a time. If any of the new monkeys tried to go up, the others would then stop them, warning of the dangers if they tried to climb the ladder and just kind of pull them down. And the researchers kept replacing them one by one until all of the monkeys who were present know to never go up the ladder and that it's dangerous. Even though at this point none of the monkeys know what happens if you go up the ladder, and the water has long since been turned off, they still prevent others from performing the same action. Now, how does this relate to the kobolds? Well, during Legion, players were able to do a side quest within High Mountain, and this quest line had us dealing with the blue wax kobolds. And just like the kobolds we know, they have an obsession with their candles. But these kobolds have good reason, for within the cave you find an altar of the candles, and if you dare blow them out, a large void-like being called the Devourer Darkness appears from within the shadows and attacks you. We learn more about this from Kip Brightwick, a kobold within the cave. I know stop candle making, unless you want story? Kobolds live here a long time, make home in nooks, catch rats, sometimes eat them, dig for treasures, trade with harpies. They like shinies, we like wax, fresh from ear is best. One day Drogbar come in, say cave is theirs. They smash and scare. We take candles and hide. Drogbar big and stupid. They have cave but no have candle. Darkness finds them. Darkness follows them. Darkness swallows them whole. We come back. We have candles. Cave ours again. Candles keep us safe. This lines up well with a few other creatures of the Old Gods, being that of Ulganeth, a minion sent by the Old Gods to capture High Mountain. Trapped there with wards by Hul High Mountain, eventually breaking free as the wards weaken, but was beaten by the Horde in the High Mountain recruitment quest, and even more so by the Darkness in Hearthstone, a card that when summoned slumbers as candles keep it at bay. But if all 3 candles are drawn and extinguished, it is then summoned, a massive destructive beast that can tear through enemies. So what does this have to do with the 5 monkeys? Well, while the Blue Axe kobolds still have to worry about the impending Void Beast because of the unique situation of High Mountain, its caves apparently filled with the beings of the Old Gods. The rest of Azeroth does not. People are mostly free to wander caves without worry of being attacked by the Void, something that was likely not as common during the Black Empire's reign, or for a while afterwards. And the kobolds are an ancient race, so they still pass down the requirement to wear candles within their caves, fearing the dangers that lurk in the shadows, ready to tear their minds and souls to shreds, knowing that if I take off my candle, I die. Even if the danger is no longer there anymore, the kobolds in other parts of the world still keep with the tradition, even if they don't actually know why they do it. We all know the old gods of Azeroth, Cthulhu the Eye, Yogg-Saron the Maw, Y'Shaarj the Head, and N'Zoth the Tendril. However, there has always been hints at a hidden fifth old god within Azeroth, including Xal'atath, or better known as Naifu by the community, possibly having been one as well. However, come Chronicles Volume 3, we were given a rather amazing looking page showing some rather simple and yet wonderful artwork of the old gods. In the bottom right, you can see N'Zoth, his tendrils leading into a watery detail, then connecting to a massive pillar of various old god structures, including many insects and Karaji, eventually leading to Cthulhu within the center. Returning back down the left side, it leads to a massive rock and cliffs, and jagged stone, maybe even ice, until we reach Yogg-Saron. Going up from it, we get more insects and twisted buildings before reaching Y'Shaarj, and its massive serpent-like body crawling all the way up to the page. But then the real big thing is in the top right. First off, we start with a massive Cthulhu-like head straight out of H.P. Lovecraft, a pair of wings, and massive amounts of tendrils. Until you look closer, these are not tendrils, and actually vines. Covered in leaves, and these tendrils are surrounding piles upon piles of skeletons. What could this mean? Well, it could mean there might be a hidden old god, one that has powers over both life, represented by nature, and death, represented by the skulls. And while this is just a minor detail in one page of Chronicles, meaning it could just be a mistake, or mean nothing, it does seem odd that they would add this detail when they could have added literally anything else. A tiny detail that many have missed, but could lead to a massive revelation within the old god's lore on Azeroth. Next, we'll talk about the continents of Azeroth. Originally, Azeroth had one massive continent. This continent included all of the land masses of Azeroth we know today, although it is confirmed that while there were more land masses, this one was the largest. During the War of the Ancients, the Well of Eternity in the center, a hole filled with the planet's blood that was created when the Titans tore Y'Shaarj out of the crust, was destroyed. This massive world-shattering explosion is what created the Azeroth we know of today. Huge amounts of land was destroyed, pushed below the sea, and yet somehow the land does not make sense. The shapes of the land seem far too oddly shaped. Chunks of land that should not have collapsed seemingly did, and weird parts of chunks of land, islands near the center that somehow survived. Well, these landscapes surviving are likely thanks to the old gods. See, the old gods are like trees. Their main bodies sit at the center, but their tendrils, their roots, they seep deep into the planet, and very far too. The Emerald Nightmare, for example, exists because of these tendrils. Yogg-Saron, all the way in the north of Ulduar, was able to reach the newly created World Tree within Grizzly Hills, and because of this, it was granted away into the Emerald Dream. And all of the old gods have these roots. We have this nice map from Chronicles that details the territories that each old god controlled. This map giving us some insight into where the old gods' roots may have been able to expand, and they are awfully close to the general shape of the different continents, especially since this map is the visual before the old gods were able to be captured and contain the elemental lords, allowing them to expand into their territory. And these roots may have been the main reason, or at least helped, in holding the continents we know together, which, funny enough, the dead old god Y'Shaarj had the territory that lost the most amount of land. While the living old god's roots were able to hold together most if not all the territory, the dead old god Y'Shaarj's roots were only able to hold together small pieces of land. While this is not confirmed, it seems pretty likely this is one of the reasons why the land still exists. There is 4 known old gods in Azeroth. Cthulhu, who was revealed and fought in Vanilla, and Yogg-Saron, who was revealed and then fought within Wrath of the Lich King. However, the same cannot be said for the other 2, as they have a much more troubled history. N'Zoth was introduced to us in Cataclysm as the big bad behind a ton of stuff in Azeroth, like the Naga and Deathwing. We actually would not get to see it until 4 expansions later with the final patch of BFA in 8.3, finally revealing the Old God's appearance to players. Outside, of course, the tiny border art that we mentioned before within the Chronicles only a year before. However, we did get to see it non-canonically beforehand, with it having appeared in Hearthstone's Whisper of the Old Gods expansion in 2016. Well,
Potential customer! Oh, do I have a deal for you?
Time is money, friend.
Not official at the time, as even Ben Brode himself said, we collaborated a lot. One of the lead artists on WoW actually did the illustrations for the Hearthstone card. Hard to say what N'Zoth would look like if it ever appears in WoW, but it's intended to be a canonical image of it, yes. It seems the WoW team loved how they made it look so much they decided to stick with Hearthstone's artwork making it official, and years later chose to make N'Zoth look that way in WoW. And yet even worse in the final Old God Y'Shaarj. Revealed in the expansion Mists of Pandaria, however, already dead when he was revealed, killed by the Titans eons ago. Outside of the tiny bit of artwork from the Border of the Chronicles page, we actually have no canonical appearance for this Old God. Nothing. We heard about it, but we're never shown an appearance. Although there is a mural within the Heart of Fear some theorize was supposed to be Y'Shaarj, it looks too much like a generic Naraki, like the one seen in Darkshore, to be that of an Old God. confirmed later when it got the exact same treatment as N'Zoth. In 2016, the Whispers of the Old God expansions released, and with it, the 4 Old Gods got their own cards, Y'Shaarj giving it a full appearance. And while we never got an official model in-game to confirm this being its appearance, we do have a little art from Chronicles which seemingly confirms this is the appearance they're sticking with. Confirming that the mural in the Heart of Fear, or the mural in the secret Calaxy Cave, is not in fact Y'Shaarj, or the stained glass within Ulduar. Even more so when he would appear again in Hearthstone's second Old God expansion, Madness at the Darkmoon Fair. For reference, Hearthstone, while based in the Warcraft universe, anything within the game is non-canon by default. But some things do come over to WoW anyway, such as the Tortolid, the new members of the Explorers League, and Patches the Pirate. Although the teams do apparently talk to each other and collaborate in order to bring exciting things into the World of Warcraft. A good example being the Mean Streets of Gadgetzan expansion, which is canonically how this city looks now. However, we simply can't see that in game, as the Azeroth we have is still stuck in the Cataclysm era. During the rise of the Horde, the Arakoa deviated from the path of their devotion to the gods Rukmar, Anzu, and Seath that were set for them, unable to defend themselves from the Sethic cult-gained power, bringing their people into a twisted, dark race. It came to them in their dreams, promising them powers beyond the cosmos, an old god, who then they came to worship, with them even thinking the Summit of Murmur to be the doing of their old god master. However, this ended up being their downfall. Coming out of the shadows, they attacked the Horde, seeing the power it was gaining, and with this threat, Gul'dan destroyed their camps and corrupted their people. Now, mad with corruption, they sought to summon their god, using a mix of fell magics of Shadowmoon and their own dark power. They seek to summon into the world, which, if successful, would have led to the destruction on all life in the Outland. Until a random nobody leveling stops the entire operation, banishing the old god back to where it came. Rather uneventful, right? While this is seemingly the only appearance of an old god on Draenor, one that is summoned and not there naturally, there is a possibility at Draenor having had an old god. Within Shadowmoon Valley, you can find an ooze called the Black Blood of Draenor. These blobs can fuse into much larger Draenor blood terrors. But the important part is the name, Black Blood of Draenor, very similar to the Black Blood of Yogg-Saron, which is Serenite, the blood of the old god Yogg-Saron. Is it possible Draenor once had an old god within Shadowmoon Valley? And before we go, there's one final thing to mention. The possible return of the old gods. While the old gods we know of so far have all died, the devs themselves have been vague about their actual death or not, since they've gone back and forth saying if they are permanently dead or not, with even saying they are outside of the cycle of death. They are thought manifested, and you can't kill thoughts. We even see with Y'Shaarj, its influence living for eons after its death, with Yogg-Saron still able to influence and even take control of those within Ulduar after its death, and Cthulhu, who was to be resurrected come Cataclysm. And then there was N'Zoth, who was killed, but many things hint at the old god having planned his death from the start. Too much stuff lines up, and comes off as too suspicious. 2, leaving the dagger that could lead to his death purposefully with his enemies, seemingly its only use being to kill him. It's almost too perfect. Now, the question is this on purpose for a possible return of the Black Empire? Or was this just horrible writing of a case of the devs needing a Deus Ex Machina in order to kill him? Honestly, it could go either way, but the precedent is set, and speculations are not baseless. Of course, alternatively, if they want to explore old gods more without bringing them back to life, we could always go to another Black Empire, as we've seen worlds taken by the corruption of the old gods, like the ones Sargeras destroyed, and the ones we see during the Star Arter fight within the Nighthold. An epic scene that may hint at possible future expansions, a good way to let us experience an old god-ruled world without having to do time shenanigans again, or destroy Azeroth. In this video, we're going to be going over the history of raiding, from Vanilla WoW all the way to Shadowlands and everything in between. Starting off with the launch of Vanilla WoW, where there was 2 raids immediately. both out on November 23, 2004, Onyxia's Lair and Molten Core, and at the moment, raids were 40-man only, requiring a full 40-man raid to combat the forces of evil. Both had their own attunements, Molten Core only a single quest, with Onyxia being a massive quest line. However, Onyxia went down first, surprisingly enough. 69 days after launch, it was killed for the first time. And Ragnaros was killed 154 days after launch. Within the caverns of Molten Core laid 3 legendaries. A special necklace that dropped for one single person before being removed, as well as the parts to craft 2 far less unique but still awesome legendaries, the Sulphurous Hammer of Ragnaros and the Thunder Fury Blessblade of the Windseeker. 2 months later, Blackwing Lair released, July 12th. Another attunement, but much shorter this time. However, it would not be cleared until after Zul'Gurub, first 20-man raid in the game. Introduced in September 13, 2005, which was cleared the day of its release. Within its walls, a Raptor and Tiger mounts randomly dropped from their bosses, followed by Blackwing Lair finally being cleared 13 days later on September 26, 2005. 3 months later, the lands of Silithus would be transformed forever. The Temple of Ahn'Qiraj would become, well, unlocked. Players then needed to work together to unlock the raid by performing massive quest lines and ringing the gong as a Scarab's Lord, to then battle the forces of the Old Gods for 10 hours. And then the temple would be attacked, first stop with the ruins of Ahn'Qiraj. The 20-man raid Smaller Wing would be cleared first day of openings of the gates, on the 23rd of January 2006. However, Cthulhu at the end of the temple, the 40-man wing of the raid, would not go down for 3 months, on the 25th of April in 2006. Within its Chittering Caverns, the red, blue, green, and yellow Karaji battle tanks were obtainable. These special mounts were only usable inside the raid though. And now for the final raid of Vanilla, and the final ever 40-man raid to be added to the game, the legendary Naxxramas, opening on June 20th, 2006. Players would exchange materials, less and less based on the reputation levels with the Argent Crusade, in order to gain access to the raid. And well, how long did it take? A massive 90 days for Kel'Thuzad to finally fall to the hands of Nihilum. On September 7th, followed not too long after by the release of the Burning Crusade, only 4 months later in January of 2007. So, not many guilds had the chance to down the place, especially with the announcement of the expansion resetting players' progress. Many players simply quit, or did not bother to raid, knowing their progress would end up basically pointless. However, within this raid, players were able to gather the pieces to then craft the legendary Atiesh, limited to Druid, Mage, Warlock, and Priest, although a slightly different version of the same staff for each class. The Burning Crusade launched with many raids as compared to most other expansions. At release, on the same day of January 16, was Gruul's Lair, Magtheridon's Lair, Serpentrine Caverns, Tempest Keep, Karazhan, and the Battle for Mount Hyjal. Karazhan, the longest of the launch raids, was the first to go down. With only 10 players allowed in the raid, it was killed only 12 days after the launch of the expansion, in January 28, 2007, with the raid dropping his mount Midnight from Atum rarely. The remaining raids at TBC would mostly be 25-man, Blizzard moving away from the 40-man raid style, favoring a new 25-man system, although with the odd 10-man here and there. Gruul's Lair was killed 19 days after the launch of the expansion, with him dying on the 2nd of February. Magtheridon went down after 40 days on the 24th of February in 2007, and was one of the longest raid fights in the game's history. Serpentrine, however, as its attunement required, was long and time-consuming, and the raid actually having more than 1 or 2 bosses, it did not fall until the 29th of March, 73 days after launch, in big part to the last boss being extremely buggy. Now into the Tempest Keep, the Eye. This raid's final boss, Kael'thas, was a very unique boss fight, with the players looting temporary legendary gear mid-fight to use for the remainder of the fight. These items being the Cosmic Infuser, Devastation, Netherstand Bow, and to fire from the Nether Spikes, Phase Shift Bulwark, Warp Slicer, and the Staff of Disintegration. However, even with all these legendaries, the fight was deemed unkillable because of his very buggy nature, and would not be until the Black Temple was released, which was on the 22nd of May, fixing many of the bugs on Kael'thas, meaning he was finally killed 130 days after launch of the raid, on May 25th, 2007, having a chance to drop his Phoenix mount on Lar. And with his death, players could finally enter Mount Hyjal, which, while available since launch, it is hard to count it as such since it was locked behind killing Kael'thas. So its days to kill is counted from Black Temple's launch. However, even though this raid was quote-unquote available since launch, and much smaller than Black Temple, it would not be the first to be cleared. Illidan was such a fan favorite that players rushed to kill the legendary Demon Hunter. Black Temple was cleared 21 days from its launch, within its walls dropping the legendary Warglaze from Illidan's Stormrage himself, followed by Mount Hyjal being killed 26 days later. Zul'Aman was then released and cleared on the day of November 13, 2007, the second 10-man raid of TBC, and the last ever 10-man only raid of WoW. However, this raid had a special event. If complete within a specific amount of time, the players could loot the Amani Warbear, which was removed come Wrath of the Lich King, not wanting it to become too easy to get. Following that, the last raid of the Burning Crusade and the last ever 25-man only raid ever would be open, the Sunwell Plateau on March 25th, 2008, with the legendary Thoradel bow dropping from the final boss Kil'jaeden, which was forced back through the portal for the first time on May 25th, 2008, exactly 1 year after his minion Kel'Thas was killed in the Tempest Keep. Wrath of the Lich King released November 13th, 2008, introducing a new raiding system, and with this raid could be done in 10-man groups or 25-man groups. The 25-man raids having slightly better gear than the 10-man versions, usually being seen as the superior version, of course. So world first kills will only be counted for 25-man. The expansion launched with the Vault of Archivon, a remastered Naxxramas, Obsidian Sanctum, and Eye of Eternity. It would not take long at all, with Naxxramas and the Eye of Eternity and the Vault of Archivon all being cleared in only 2 days on November 15th. The Eye of Eternity containing the Azure Drake and the Blue Drake, while the Vault of Archivon contained the 3-person mount, the Grand Black War Mammoth, a blue one for Alliance and red for Horde. Part of the reason these were killed so quickly was because gear from Sunwell Plateau was still pretty good in early Wrath of the Lich King. This was something they fixed later on in expansions where previous gear from previous expansions were no longer good enough to be good during entry-level raids. The other raid, Sartharion 3 Drakes, taking until the 21st of November to die. Sartharion is a dragon within a single room. Besides him is 3 smaller dragon mini-bosses that need to be killed before engaging him. However, if the raid pulled the boss and killed him without killing the dragons, they would join in on the fight. And if the boss was then killed, a special achievement and bonus loot including a dragon mount would pop up. The Black Drake in 10-man and the Twilight Drake in 25-man. Next was Ulduar, releasing April 14th, 2009, containing the legendary Mace Valnir, with the raid also making the most use of the hard mode mechanic compared to any other raid in the game's history. We have a whole video on these if you want to learn more about them, but I'll go over them quickly here. By doing something specific during or before the fight, the raid can activate a harder version of that fight, which would just make the fight harder, giving extra special loot for killing the boss in that manner, and also sometimes extra bosses. Algalon the Observer requiring the players to kill a few of the bosses in hard mode to unlock. However, the biggest achievement was killing Yogg-Saron without the help of any of the keepers. Quite the difficult feat, as the fight is very obviously designed around the keepers helping you with that fight, which was known as Yogg-Saron plus 0 or Yogg-Saron 0 lights. It took players 85 days to kill the Mouthy clan with no lights, all the way to July 7, 2009. Dropping the Mimiron's head mount, guaranteed to drop 1 per kill, at least until the Cataclysm pre-patch where it became a random drop. In the very next raid, they introduced some new mechanics, the Heroic mode. These versions of the raid gave even stronger loot while also just being harder. And to pair, they added a limited attempt counter. While in Heroic, any wipes would count that counter, and if you ran out of attempts, you would need to wait till the next week to be able to try again. With the Trial of the Crusader even having a special achievement for killing the entire raid without a single wipe, rewarding the players with a unique Crusader horse in 25-man or a horse/wolf for 10-man depending on your faction, all retired with the Cataclysm's launch. So with the Trial of the Grand Crusader launching on August 4th, 2009, its Heroic would have been cleared soon, except for the fact that its Heroic mode did not actually open until September 1st, 2009, almost a month later, finally letting players attempt Heroic versions of the raid. So how long did it take? Well, around 7 days, with the new Barak going down September 7th, followed shortly after by the return of Onyxia. Blizzard, in celebration of 5 years of WoW, brought back the legendary dragon in a new 10/25-man version that was killed the exact same day she came out on September 22nd, having a chance to drop the Onyxia Drake, a mount version of the dragon herself. Outside of Onyxia's lair, every raid after Trial of the Grand Crusader would follow the same system of normal/heroic 10/25-man modes.
Let them come. Frostborn hungers.
Icecrown Citadel, where players crafted the legendary Shadowmourne after a long, raid-wide questline to combat the legendary Frostmourne wielded by Arthas the Lich King. releasing in December 2009 on the 8th. It would take a while to clear the raid, as the raid needed to be cleared on normal before it could be cleared on heroic, and with the raid having a massive time gate of releasing a new wing every couple of weeks, heroic mode would not open until 2 months after the launch of Icecrown, on the 9th of February. Finally able to enter the raid on heroic, it took players 46 days to finally put the Lich King himself down, on March 26, 2010, dropping the infamous Invisible Mount Invincible, a guaranteed drop once per kill, at least until the Cataclysm pre-patch. And just over a month later, the raid Ruby Sanctum, a single boss raid getting players ready story-wise for the Cataclysm, would release and be killed the same day on June 30th. Now, before we move on from Wrath of the Lich King, we must talk about achievements. With their introduction, many raid fights would get simple achievements for killing bosses. However, from now on, any raids added would get new special achievements. These achievements are gifted for doing unique things during a fight, with various challenges, some making fights harder, some not really being anything other than doing the fight really well. But completing these achievements usually gave nothing but a bit of achievement points to show off to your friends. However, there was one thing: meta achievements. By completing all of the special achievements for a raid, you would be granted a special mount. For example, completing all of the special achievements for all of the bosses in Old War 10-man would give you the Rusted Protodrake mount, while 25-man would give you the Ironbound Protodrake. The same style reward was in the remastered Naxxramas, giving the Plagued and Black Protodrake. However, they were made unobtainable come Old War's launch, something they decided to stop doing after this, as it seemingly did not go over well, as the Old War mounts and all those meta achievement mounts to follow would stay obtainable. So for those that have meta achievement mounts, we will list them in the video. For example, Icecrown Citadel had the Undead Frostdrake mounts. December 7th, 2010. The Cataclysm would release with some raid changes. First off, the limited attempt mechanic was removed, and the rest of the changes would come later. With the launch, there was 3 raids: Bastion of Twilight, Blackwing Descent, and the Throne of Four Winds. Blackwing Descent would be the first to be cleared on January 9th, 27 days after launch. Bastion of Twilight would be next on the 20th of January 2011, 38 days after launch. The first ever raid to have a heroic-only boss. In normal, the final boss is Cho'Gall, however in heroic mode, players would be pitted against the new heroic-only boss, Sinestro. This kill was followed shortly after by the Throne of Four Winds at 42 days. This raid having a chance to drop the Drake of the South Wind mount. And doing the meta achievement for all 3 of these raids, the players would be gifted the Drake of the East Wind mount. Buried in Hold was also in at launch and was meant as a replacement for world bosses, locked behind PvP world zones, and a new boss added with each new patch. All just like the Vault of Archivon. Cleared day of course. The next raid to come out would be Firelands on June 28th, containing our Firelord Ragnaros once again. And also, after completing a long questline for it, the Dragonwrath staff, a staff which had a unique effect that allowed you to transform into a dragon-flying mount, which you still need to have the staff equipped in order to do that, as they didn't turn it into a toy or something for players that were able to obtain it. The Lord of Fire Ragnaros himself would not be killed once and for all until July 19th, 2011, only 14 days after its launch. The raid had 2 mounts it could drop: the Pureblood Firehawk from Ragnaros, which is a guaranteed drop if killed on heroic mode before the Mist of Pandaria pre-patch, and the Flame Talon of Alice Razor, which was a rare drop from the Alice Razor fight, followed by the Corrupted Firehawk gifted to players for completing the Glory of the Firelands Raider meta achievement. And now for the big one, Dragon Soul, releasing November 29th and containing the Twin Blades of the Dragon Prince, a rather cool pair of daggers for rogues crafted with the help of Wrathion, the son of Deathwing. And this raid contained a ton of mounts. First, the Twilight Harbinger given to players who did the raid's meta achievement, and 3 mount drops: the Lifebinder's Handmaiden from Heroic Deathwing, guaranteed 1 drop per kill until Mist of Pandaria pre-patch, the Blazewing Drake randomly from Norok and Heroic Deathwing, and Experiment 12B randomly from Ultraxion. And enough about the good parts, let's talk about some of the issues. First off, the raid was seen as rather poor, with some awkward boss fights and some right-out horrible ones. It didn't take long to die though, dying December 20th, only 14 days after launch. And yeah, the dates do not add up. 20th of December is not 14 days after the 29th of November, but again, that's because players needed to unlock Heroic first. So the first week they did normal to then unlock Heroic week 2. So that is where it and others are counted from. But the real problem was LFR, a new difficulty mode introduced in the game. This mode was very easy and quite time-gated, with its wings coming out week by week. Later nerfed to a new wing every 2 weeks. It also gave weaker gear than normal. But the problem was that it gave the tier set bonuses. and could be combined with other difficulty tier set bonuses versions in order to get the 2 and 4 set. And the tier set bonuses in Dragon Soul were some of the strongest in the game's history. And there was this little old exploit you could do in LFR, where you could only personally loot the bosses once a week. However, other people in the raid could trade you gear as long as you participated in the fight. So, top raiders were stacking LFR with alts and just having them win the rolls and trade all their gear to the main raiders, giving them all a full 4 set bonus as soon as Heroic started. And so many top guilds were banned because of this, and also because of this, Blizzard nerfed LFR heavily in the following expansions, not wanting high-end players to feel they needed to do LFR, or especially that they needed to exploit it. Oh, and also, meta achievements could not be completed in LFR, so you could do them only in normal Heroic, but it was best to do them in normal, as that was the easiest way to make sure you can get them done. With the downfall of Deathwing, we enter Pandaria, September 25th, 2012. For the first time ever, the raids were not available at launch, giving players time to level before releasing the raids, not wanting to worry as much about leveling being a major part of the World First race. And so, the first raid, Mogushan's Vault, was released on October 2nd. And so, week 1, of course, normal raid was cleared, which leads to week 2, the Heroic final boss only dying 3 days after it became available, dying on October 12th, 2012. Within this raid was Elegon, a celestial cloud serpent that dropped a celestial cloud serpent mount, of course. Following that, the Heart of Fear would release on October 30th, 2012, with yet again another short race. Week 1 normal clear, week 2 Heroic being cleared in only 5 days on November 11th. Terrace of Endless Spring would be released on November 13th, then being cleared in 5 days once Heroic became available, the Shot of Fear falling on November 25th. Completing the meta achievements for all these raids granted the players the Heavenly Crimson Cloud Serpent. However, also clearing all the raid bosses in Heroic as a guild unlocked the Thundering Jade Cloud Serpent mount, to be purchasable from the guild's vendor for 3,000 gold. And then on March 5th, we would be gifted with the amazing raid, Throne of Thunder, with yet again another Heroic-only final boss, that being Raw Dead, and the return of the limited attempt system. The raid was called completed 14 days after Heroic opened on March 26th, but then Raw Den was taken out afterwards by a fair bit too, not dying until April 11th, 2013, taking over 2 weeks. And for completing this raid's meta achievement, they were rewarded with the Armored Sky Screamer. But for killing the bosses in the raid, you had 2 mounts you could obtain as rare drops, the Spawn of Horadon from Horadon, and the Clutch of Jikun from Jikun. Now into the Siege of Orgrimmar, launching September 10th, it only took 14 days after Heroic unlocked to kill Garrosh, on the 1st of October, although 11 of the 14 bosses in the raid died in only the first 2 days, meaning the other 12 days was spent on the last 3 bosses of the raid. The meta achievement gave the Spawn of Galakras mount, and the Korkron Juggernaut mount a guaranteed drop from the hardest difficulty of Garrosh, changed with the Warlords of Draenor pre-patched to a random drop in the hardest difficulty. But we're not done yet. Siege of Orgrimmar introduced a few new systems. First off, the Ahead of the Curve achievement. This achievement was granted to players who killed Garrosh in normal mode or better before the release of Warlords of Draenor pre-patch. This achievement granted players the Korkron Warwolf, which meant once Warlords of Draenor pre-patch came out, the mount was no longer available. The other thing was the Flex mode. Easier than normal, but harder than LFR. This version of the raid could be done in any amount of players from 10 to 30, scaling the difficulty of the bosses to better suit your raid, meaning you no longer had the issue of having 20 players and either pugging, not raiding, or splitting into 2 10-man groups. This would not last long though, as the final change is the one that came in the pre-patch for Warlords of Draenor. They reworked all of the raid difficulties. LFR stayed the same, actually, but Flex was renamed to Normal and stayed the same. Normal was renamed to Heroic, and now worked the same way as Flex did, but just as a harder difficulty, while Heroic was renamed to Mythic. This difficulty was rather unchanged, staying the hardest mode, and staying a static number of raiding. However, Mythic raiding was limited to 20 people, meaning no more 25-man raiding and no more 10-man raiding in the hardest difficulty. If you want to do the hardest content, you had to have 20 people. No more, no less. However, with all of the other difficulties, as long as you had more than 10 players and less than 30, you could raid, and that is a system that would stay to this very day. Before we move on, I'm sure you noticed a lack of legendaries. Well, from now on, mostly legendaries would be earned through all sorts of content, part to do with raids, but mostly just earned all over the place. World content, questing, crafting, and even PvP. But raids were not the main focus of where you obtain the legendaries anymore, especially as legendaries were no longer something a couple few would get. They were now something every single person was pretty much guaranteed to get as long as they completed their own quest lines with their personal loot, no longer having to fight against fellow raiders for random raid drops to craft their legendaries, or roll for rare drops. Now on to Warlords of Draenor, releasing November 13th, High Maul in his first raid was released December 2nd, with Mythic not releasing until the 9th, as like Heroic of the past, Mythic would not open till a week after the raid's launch. And so with Mythic launching the 9th of December, the final boss, Imperator Margok, was killed only 4 days later, on the 13th of December 2014. The second raid of the expansion, Blackrock Foundry, releasing February 3rd, 2015, and the legendary fight Blackhand would survive only 10 days, dying on the 20th of February. This raid was a return to glory, being well known as the best raid of the expansion, especially with such an amazing fight as Blackhand. Completing both of these raids while in a guild unlocked the Black Steel Battle Boar, while completing the meta achievement version of the fights granted everyone the Gore Strider Grongling. And for mount drops, the Iron Hoof Destroyer, a massive cleft hoof coated with burning wood and metal, dropping on Mythic only as a random drop. And now on to the final raid for Draenor. Yeah, that was quick. Hellfire Citadel, launching June 23rd, with Archimonde dying 16 days after the Mythic version of the raid opening. This place has 3 mounts. First off, the Infernal Direwolf for the meta achievement. Second off, the Grove Warden for the Ahead of the Curve achievement mount, which was removed in the preparation for Legion. And the Felsteel Annihilator dropping from Mythic Archimonde. Again, a guarantee dropped until it was lowered to 1% come the next expansion. Now, on to Legion's final invasion of Azeroth with Legion. Launching August 30th, its first raid, Emerald Nightmare, would not be released until many weeks later on September 20th. And how long did it take for its mythic final boss to go down? 18 hours. Most world first raid groups got to Cenarius, the second to last boss, and assuming Xavius would be really difficult, they moved to Heroic to do more farm and collect more gear to help them. But the winners, Exorus, said F it, and instead decided to give it a shot, and well, it died really quick, and was snatched away from Midwinter and Easy, who were on the task to get it. According to some world first raiders, a reason Xavius went down so fast was because of Mythic Plus gear being so good at the start of the expansion. Because it was then when that system was released for the first time, and they hadn't figured out how to not make the gear super good for Mythic raiding yet. The next raid, Trial of Valor, came out November 8th, and took only 3 days after Mythic Unlocked to die, died on the 18th of November 2016. And while the raid did not drop anything super special, it did have a special achievement. If you completed the raid without having a single death during all 3 of the fights in one single clear, you would get a unique color of the raid's gear set. A quite unique reward that was removed with the BFA pre-patch. January 18th, 2017, the Nighthold, still part of Tier 1. This raid took a fair while to clear for once, 11 days and a massive 248 attempts for Gul'dan to finally drop on the 4th of February. Illidan was free, and with that, a couple of mounts too. For the meta achievement, the Grove Defiler, and for random drops, the Fellblaze and the Hellfire Infernals. Both dropped from Gul'dan, but the Fellblaze Infernal dropped from any difficulty of Gul'dan, except for the first week of the boss fight being on Raid Finder where the Infernal could drop as a bug. But the Hellfire Infernal acted as a 100% mount from Gul'dan from killing him on Mythic, again being reduced to 1% come the BFA pre-patch. With how powerful players got by the end of Legion, and how long they had to farm this mount, it ended up with the green version, available in all difficulties, being more rare than the red one, as at least the red was a guaranteed drop, while the green seemingly had less than a 1% chance to drop. Our next raid was the Tomb of Sargeras, releasing June 20th. The final boss being yet again another demon lord we beat before, Kil'jaeden. This fight was well known for how horrible it was. 654 wipes to take down. It required most of the raid to race change to goblins in order to use rocket jump to counter one of the boss's mechanics. And also, with a heavy RNG in the fight, it took quite the toll on players. Fun fact, he died 2 years exactly after Archimonde did on July 16th, 2017. The raid's meta achievement did not give a special mount, it only gave a title and pet. Rather lame for non-pet battlers, but at least it had the Abyssal Worm mount, which dropped from Mistress Sazine. And the final raid of Legion was Antorus the Burning Throat, released November 28th, 2017. The final boss, Argus the Unmaker, would survive a whole 8 days, dying on December 13th. This raid also contained a special legendary. There were epic trinkets that players could obtain, being based on the Titans. However, Argus himself had a chance to drop a legendary trinket. This trinket having an extremely rare chance to drop. Some guilds killing Argus multiple times every week they could would never see this trinket with just how rare it was. Quite odd, but it was quite powerful. At least for some specs, that is. Mount-wise, there was 4 of them. the Antoran Gloomhound earned from the meta achievement, and its twin brother, both based on the Twin Hounds boss of the raid, the Antoran Charhound, which was a rare drop from those specific bosses. Sadly, putting these mounts side by side does not make them bigger like the bosses do when they're near each other. And once again, we were given a mythic-only final boss mount, that being the Shackled Urzul. An amazing mount at that. Sick and twisted, it was a 100% chance to drop when killed on Mythic. But with the BFA pre-patch, it was dropped to 1%. And for the Ahead of the Curve achievement, we had the Violet Spellwing. This mount was gained by gathering a Blood of the Titan from Heroic or higher Argus the Unmaker, and then turning it into Khadgar. Like other Ahead of the Curve achievement mounts, it was made unavailable come the pre-patch for the next expansion. Now to BFA, the last complete expansion at the time of this video, releasing August 14th, 2018. Its first raid Uldir would release September 11th, 2018, with its final boss Gahoon dropping dead on the 19th of September, only living 8 days. While no mounts dropped in the raid, completing its meta achievement gave the players the Glory of the Uldir Raider and the Blood Gorge Crag. Next, we have the Battle for Dazar Allure, one of the most unique raids in many years. First off, it had different bosses based on your faction. While Trial of the Grand Crusader had different bosses based on factions visually, and so did Icecrown Citadel with the loot ship being the opposite faction, this one had 3 different bosses with not only different bosses visually, but also different boss rooms, and even slightly different mechanics in some cases. It also had the unique effect of transforming your race. While Caverns of Time dungeons in the past have visually changed your race, this was the first time your race actually got changed, force changing your racials. The Champion of Light, Grog, and Jadefire Masters fights were all different between Horde and Alliance. The Jadefire Masters, for example's trash, and the fight itself being famously much easier for Alliance than Horde. Then comes the fight Opulence, Conclave of the Chosen, the King Rusticon. Horde members would be transformed into Alliance and replay the Alliance attack, while the Alliance would be transformed into the Horde to replay the Horde retaliation during the High Tinker Mechatork, Stormwind Blockade, and the Lady Jaina Proudmoore fights. This was super unique and overall an amazing storytelling aspect, something I would love to see used more often in the future. Maybe even with Lady Sylvanas' fight being slightly different for Horde members who chose to support her in BFA? Now on to dates and times. The raid released January 29th, 2019, and Jaina finally died after 346 wipes 7 days later on February 5th. Completing the meta achievement gave the Dazar Allure Wind Reaver, but the raid itself has amazing mounts as drops. First, the Gmod, a replica of Galliwix's blinged out mech suit, including a massive engravement on its face and its shield, dropping from High Tinker Mechatorg. The next mount is the Glacial Tidestorm, a water/ice elemental drop from Jaina on Mythic. It was guaranteed when it was current, but now it's only a 1% drop. Which, by the way, later in BFA's lifespan, Blizzard made a hotfix, which caused this and the rest of the BFA final bosses' mythic mounts to drop 2 at a time instead of 1, doubling the amount raids could get each week. The Crucible of Storm, our first 2 boss raid in a long time, and also a very hard one at that. Releasing April 23rd, it took until May 3rd to get beat. With over 700 pulls, it took 9 days to go down. Who would have thought that a raid with only 2 bosses would be so hard? Although to be fair, the reason the wipe count was so high was because of a Phase 1 mechanic that could wipe the raid very quickly if the 6 people at Winton touched each other. And since the super deadly mechanic was an early Phase 1 mechanic, it racked up an inflated amount of wipes for all World First Raiders until it was hotfixed. Next, we have the Eternal Palace. Releasing July 16th, it took 12 days for Ajar to be defeated, ending on July 28th. This raid overall was seen poorly by the community, with a few rather annoying fights, like the ones with Orgoza having a maze, Radiance of Ajara being an annoying mess of tornadoes, and Blackwater Behemoth, which, ironically, was one of the rather well-liked fights and was completely underwater. And then Queen Ajara herself, the first boss in many years to require the player to actively use line-of-sight mechanics for most of the mechanics for the fight. And that did not go over well for players, especially healers trying to heal people on the other side of pillars. The raid had the Ajari Bloat Ray from its meta achievement, but didn't have any random drop mounts. Last to BFA, Nyalotha the Waking City, its meta achievement granting the Wriggling Parasite mount, the final boss N'Zoth dropping the Nyalotha All-Seer on Mythic only. Again guaranteed to drop 1, later 2 on kill, but reduced to 1% drop rate with the pre-patch. And the Ahead of the Curve mount, the spawn of Vexinoa, given to players who killed N'Zoth on Heroic before the launch of the Shadowlands pre-patch. Now, how did the raid go? Well, overall, the raid was good, but the new corruption system introduced kind of ruined how a lot of people felt about the place. And especially with an old god going down so easily, it angered a lot of the player base. Although, it seems a lot of people forget that shooting anything with a beam intended to glass an entire planet, made to destroy old gods in case they infected the planet, is likely to kill it, no matter if it's a powerful old god or not. So, with the raid releasing January 28th, 2020, N'Zoth the Corruptor, the final old god of Azeroth, would find himself vaporized Kamehameha style after only 10 days, February 6, 2020. Cool fact, this was the first ever world first end boss killed by US in over 8 years. As for the last 8 years before this, EU had a much better time. Maybe in part to complexity limit running a 21-man raid roster. Maybe go look up the video on that, but gist of it is instead of having the raid lead in the raid, they are focused 100% on raid leading by watching the raid through their streams, so they can focus on what needs to be done by who without worrying about doing their own stuff and doing a rotation. Another fun fact, this is the first raid ever that has required players to have their legendary to beat it, as engaging N'Zoth without the legendary cape would have the player near instantly mind controlled, turning them against their allies, which was an interesting experience when N'Zoth finally opened up for LFR raiders. Now onto the current expansion, Shadowlands. Castle Nathria is the first raid of the expansion. The raid only had one mount, the Rampart Screecher, from completing the meta achievement. The expansion released on October 26, 2020, and the raid released in December 8, 2020. The final boss, Sire Denathrius, was finally killed on December 23rd. It took a fair while. For a first raid of an expansion, Castle Nathria proved itself to actually be quite hard. Well worth the Vampire Lord himself, though. Now, for the final raid launched at the time of this video, the Sanctum of Domination, which is not out yet. However, it will be launching on July 6th, with the Mythic launch the next week on July 13th. So obviously, as the raid has not come out yet, we can't really talk about what was killed first or how long it took. So for now, we all just have to wait and see how long all that takes. But what we can talk about is the mounts. With 3 mounts, the raid is rather well off. The Sanctum Gloomcharger dropping from the 9, and Vengeance, a Maw-themed Dragonhawk, a manifestation of Sylvanas' want and need for vengeance, acting as the 100% mythic drop mount from Sylvanas Windrunner. Like all others, going to be reduced to 1% come the next expansion after Shadowlands. The final mount being the Hand of Hrestmarok, a giant hand mount granted to players who complete the meta achievement for the raid. But it's been quite a while since we've had a legendary weapon drop from a raid, and who better to drop one than Sylvanas herself, with her rare Shalair's Death Whisper, our first legendary weapon in 10 years. Hunters using this bow gain a new ability, allowing them to fire a wailing arrows that damages and silences in an AoE, just like her ability in Heroes of the Storm, while also having a back that hunters can equip with the appearance of a quiver, giving them a Withering Arrow passive, again like her Heroes of the Storm ability. And while we're at it, we might as well mention the Edge of Night Dagger, which works for rogues, applying a debuff that deals damage and finishing moves deal more damage as the enemy's health gets lower. Also, as the years went on, we got Time Walking in Warlords of Draenor, allowing players to replay old dungeons, scale down to somewhat relevant power levels for their respective place. However, as expansions went on, we got more and more expansions, eventually even getting Time Walking raids, allowing us to replay old raids as they were currently. Sort of, being Black Temple, Old War, and Firelands. Black Temple Time Walking allowing players to earn the Warglave's Transmog for the Demon Hunters, even eventually introducing a limited time event for the 15th year anniversary, having raid groups do small fractions of key moments in raids of the past. Lady Vash, Kel'Thas, and Archimonde for TBC, Hagen, Anubarak, and Arthas for Wrath of the Lich King, Cho'Gall, Nefarian, and Ragnaros for Cataclysm. Upon completing all of these iconic bosses of the past, the players would be given the Memories of Fell Frost and Fire achievement, granting them the Obsidian Worldbreaker mount, a mount with a huge resemblance to Deathwing, an amazing celebration of 15 years of WoW. And of course, with Classic having been introduced, many of the raid times were just destroyed. Karazhan, Magtheridon's Lair, Gruul's Lair all having been cleared within 48 hours of launch. Classic really has shown how much player base of WoW has grown, and how much we have metagamed everything to the utmost of optimization. So I would love to go over that, but it's rather depressing how quickly some of these impossibly difficult, going to take forever to clear raids were actually cleared in Classic, with I think even one of them being cleared after an hour after it launched. Now, as mentioned above, this video would be way too long if we went in depth over everything. So we didn't mention skips, which for example, raids are very long, and so many of them had unlockable skips. Killing specific bosses on a difficulty would eventually allow you to skip right to the boss in future weeks. In places like Castle Nathria, Hellfire Citadel, and Blackrock Foundry, this made re-clearing the raid no longer necessary when you only wanted the final couple bosses. But if you wanted any specific info on something mentioned, you can easily search the channel to see if we have a video on it, which we'll likely do, like history of hard modes, for example, or the top 10 vehicle fights, or history of legendaries, easiest mounts videos, and more, all things that cover specifics of the raids that we had to skim over in this video.
Pope Francis says conservative Catholics who criticise him for failing to defend the faith are performing the work of the devil. Au contraire, if anyone's doing the work of the devil, it's you. The Pope claims his critics are whipping up hostility against the Church. They're not attacking the Church, they're attacking you. Why do you act like your actions and statements are separate from and not representative of the Church? You're the Supreme Pontiff, for fuck's sake. You're the figurehead. Where you lead, the Church follows. And where you lead has been pretty fucking disastrous, hasn't it? Mandating everyone who enters Vatican City show a green pass to prove they've been vaccinated. A green pass that Italians are being forced to take or face losing their jobs. A digital ID that tracks their location. A huge lurch towards a social credit score system that could eventually be used to determine, based on level of compliance, whether somebody is allowed to buy or sell.
Sorry, you're only on your 9th vaccination and we don't sell to racists.
Yeah, when you're literally helping to fulfill the Revelation's prophecy of the mark of the beast. That doesn't sound very Christian to me. Sounds more like the work of the devil. Archbishop Carla Maria Vigano warns of a health dictatorship brought in under the banner of the Great Reset. We see heads of nations and religious leaders pandering to this suicide of Western culture and its Christian soul, while the fundamental rights of citizens and believers are denied in the name of a health emergency that is revealing itself more and more fully as instrumental to the establishment of an inhuman, faceless tyranny. And what do you have to say about it? Shut up and take the vaccine. So Christian. Last year you offered your support for gay marriage, saying same-sex couples should be able to form civil unions. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall seeing much sympathy for homosexuality in the Bible. Whatever anyone thinks about gay marriage, one thing you can't describe it as is being very Christian. Not according to Pope Francis. What are you going to do next? Endorse abortion? You also think there's no hell and that souls just disappear. Something that completely contradicts the Catholic Church's 2,000-year-old teaching about the eternal existence of the soul. No soul, no consequences. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Yeah, that sounds like something. But it's definitely not Christian. You facilitated the church establishment targeting of conservative Catholics merely for them trying to uphold the faith.
Personally, I know many priests who have been canceled, but not for the reasons you'd think. I mean, it's not like they did a hit-and-run drive and left the scene of the crime or embezzled church funds, stole the altar wine, or committed some other heinous crime. No, not at all. And who's persecuting them? Well, their own bishops. How's that? Yep. Who are they? Well, they're a pack of men who generally passively sit by and tolerate any kind of nonsense, but if one of their priests utters something that resembles orthodoxy, well then they spring into action, they reprimand him, and they bully him and do their best to cancel him. It's a symptom of a very deep sickness that afflicts the church.
You've isolated and removed from power prominent Catholics like Cardinal Sarah, who, unlike you, has actually used his platform to defend the faith.
On vous sent inquiet pour le monde occidental. Qu'est-ce qui vous inquiète?
Vous savez, la plus grande inquiétude, c'est que l'Europe ne veut plus ou a perdu le sens de ses origines. Il a perdu ses racines. Or, un arbre qui n'a pas de racines, il meurt. Et j'ai peur que l'Occident meure. Il y a beaucoup de signes. Oui, beaucoup de signes. Plus de natalité. Et vous êtes envahi quand même par d'autres cultures, d'autres peuples, qui vont progressivement vous dominer en nombre et changer totalement votre culture, vos convictions.
Cardinal Sarah says it's a false exegesis to use the word of God to promote mass migration. And what do you say? Refugees welcome.
The Pope kneels to wash the feet of a group of refugees. Nobody seems to care about the difference in their religions.
Cardinal Francis Arinze says Europeans must stop encouraging the departure of young Africans. Africa needs them. What do you say? Refugees welcome. US Cardinal Raymond Burke says that resisting large-scale immigration from Muslim countries is an act of patriotism. Burke said that Islam, by its definition, believes itself to be destined to rule the world. What do you say? Refugees welcome. You ignored the warning of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who begged you not to allow Christianity to perish via the mass importation of non-Christian migrants. How did you respond? By immediately telling Hungarians to open their arms to refugees. Because that's worked out so well for Europe so far, hasn't it? One of the refugees you posed with for a photo op was an illegal immigrant who went on to burn down a cathedral and kill a French priest in cold blood. What did you have to say about that? Nothing. What was your response to Charlie Hebdo? You literally sided with the terrorists and all but excused their actions. At the exact same time that the slaughtered cartoonists were being buried, you scorned them for insulting the Prophet Muhammad.
È vero che non si può reagire violentamente, ma se il dottor Gasparri, grande amico, mi dice una parolaccia contro la mia mamma, ma gli aspetta un pugno. Ma è normale. È normale. Non si può provocare, non si può insultare la fede degli altri.
If only the Pope had as much respect for Christianity as he does for Islam. But I guess it's forgivable. I mean, it's not like he's the fucking Pope or anything, is it? What was your response to the Orlando nightclub massacre carried out by an Islamic terrorist? You blamed Christians and said they should apologize to gays. What was your response to the Paris massacre carried out by jihadists who exploited the refugee wave? Let more in. Refugees welcome. Wash some more migrants' feet for the cameras. Fuck off. We're full. We've had enough. We've also had enough of your capitulation and betrayal of Christianity. Churches across Europe are being pillaged and burnt down. Statues are being decapitated. And what do you have to say about it? Refugees welcome. If only the Pope had as much respect for Christianity as he does the official religion of global government. Man-made climate change. You literally called for including environmental infractions into the Catechism of the Catholic Church as sins against Gaia, Mother Earth, the false god. You literally called for the creation of a world government to fight climate change, trashing the nation state and calling for power to be transferred to, quote, intergovernmental institutions that manage their common interests. You went on to say, quote, this universal common good in turn must acquire a more pronounced juridical value at international level. What does the Bible say about world government? Revelation 13:1, Daniel 7:16-24, Daniel 2:41-42. The beast system in the final days is world government, controlled by old Lucifer himself. That's what the Bible says.
In his apocalyptic vision in the book of Revelation, the Apostle John sees the beast, also called the Antichrist, rising out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Combining this vision with Daniel's similar one, we can conclude that some sort of world system will be inaugurated by the beast, the most powerful horn, who will defeat the other 9 and will begin to wage war against Christians. The 10-nation confederacy is also seen in Daniel's image of the statue in Daniel 2:41-42, where he pictures the final world government consisting of 10 entities represented by the 10 toes of the statue.
Yeah, world government doesn't sound very Christian to me, and yet you're constantly promoting it. Why is that? So save me the sanctimonious finger wagging at your critics. By every single measure, you're subverting the faith. Vaccine passports, gay marriage, mass immigration, demographic replacement, global government. You say anyone who questions you is performing the work of the devil. Just like when you blamed the paedophile scandal on Satan, while you helped cover it up. If your rhetoric and actions serve to bolster the very agenda that every anti-Christ globalist is striving for, then it's not your critics who are doing the work of the devil. It's you. It's absolutely crucial for you to help me fight the war on free speech by supporting me via Subscribe Star, link in description, and also signing up for my free newsletter at Summit.
We've got from Felly the Goblin again, who said lip syncing's not as easy as animating something quickly in Engine because, like you said, they need to update the game to have the animations it needs in the model. But it really isn't difficult. I make 3D animations with the WoW models with lip syncing using the bones they already have. It's not Blizzard cinematic quality, but it's not difficult for an animator who already knows how it works. I suppose then a large part of that is pipeline. They maybe are not set up such that the actual, WoW game team has the pipeline there. I wonder too if there are WoW engine specific issues where I don't know what pipeline you use when you do the model stuff, Felly. I mean, actually, if you have things on YouTube, I could probably look and find out. Or I'm just trying to say anything that's like obviously machinima, but maybe not. Just to dig in. Yep. But I guess it could just be that when we're doing these things like Blender, or Cinema 4D, and all of that software, that's it's easy to do there. But maybe the actual tools that the developers have, like that's the other side of it. Because I totally get it, Felly. Like I don't know if you've used Unity before, but animating that stuff in Unity with but certainly doing all the camera angles and stuff, you could certainly see how you could throw together in Unity a cinematic using Cine Machine. I mean, Cine Machine's pretty awesome, isn't it? Cine Machine was basically the camera tools that I believe were made for Homeworld Deserts of Karak.
Yes.
It got spun off into Cine Machine, and then Cine Machine got acquired by Unity. But Cine Machine works with Unity Timeline really well. At least it did back when I was doing that dev work for some stuff in our game. Not our current game, the one before that of course is cancelled. Maybe it's indefinitely, who knows. But yeah, I could totally see how I could do that in Unity. But that's because they had, big teams working on Cine Machine, teams working on Mechanim, so they acquired Mechanim as well and made that in-house. Big team working in Timeline and all of those engine features. Do Blizzard have those for the WoW engine? That, I guess, is the big question, because yeah, you're right. If it would be easy for us to do if it was in Unity, and if it's easy for us to do in the likes of Blender or something, maybe the question is, what is the internal tools like? I haven't seen him, but that's certainly something to think about.
Certainly is.
We've got from Habu O, who said, unlocked Samurai yet? You can unlock it in Ul'dah, and you don't need to get any further than 50 on a job. That's good news, because I assumed... wait, Samurai was added in Heavensward.
Nope.
No, it was added in... Of course, I mean, think about the arts. Think about the friggin' art style, Michael, because I've seen all the trailers. Obviously, Stormblood.
It was added in the Japanese expansion.
Yeah, what a surprise!
Yep.
Sweet. I assumed I would have had to have progressed a little bit more to get that, but no, I can start it now.
Pretty sure
that's good because I am told the MSQ will flood me with more XP than I know what to do with. Therefore, having 2 active jobs seems to be the thing to do as I move through MSQ. So thank you, that's good to know. On FF, Benoit also super does say that it just unlocked all jobs, got them all to 30 plus, fun times.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the promise of it all being in one character, especially when you have that XP boost on the odd jobs, which then makes it feel like, oh shit, I can just go do that thing. I'm just gonna get that. Like I saw one person playing Gunbreaker. Is it Gunbreaker? Yeah. And it was just, some of their animations were cool, and they had a gun sword, and that looked cool. I'm like, oh shit, because like I don't roll a new tune for that. I can actually pick it up, and my XP will be so big that, you know, between like the odd leveling roulette and just the class story, I'll be fine. Yeah, it works. Yep. We've got from Dreyfus Frost, who said, I'm one of those crazy people who cleared all 3 ultimates on controller. Don't use default options, and it's not inferior. There you go. It's possible on controller. Yep. Everyone seems to say this, so yeah, it totally is. I need to get the muscle memory going. Yep. But I'm actually a good setup, and I should probably take a look at Mr. Ginger Prime's setup, see how he's rolling. So, 9.0.5. What's the state of WoW right now?
That's a very good question. It's a little messy, but relatively okay. Looking at it from like the complete outside perspective of like if you picked it up now, it's more than fine in terms of everything. Outside of this pot of bugs,
yeah.
And outside of a couple there's a whole lot of problems with like getting alts with, you know, having to go through Torghast, having to go through them off for things. But generally speaking, it's alright. But the problem is it's been, you know, 9.0.5 is...
Welcome back to the news, everyone. Alright, decently chunky update to the Activision Blizzard story, but it's not one that really marks the end of anything whatsoever, though it could actually be quite nice for some of the people who have been wronged. Here's the deal. Activision Blizzard reach an agreement with the EEOC, commit to new workplace initiatives, and create an $18 million compensation fund. Which, just off the face of it, is funny to me because, literally funny, but remember when Riot had their thing, which turned into a $10 million fund, and then whatever State Department, I think, slammed in and was like, 10 mil, that's not enough. This could be like 400 mil. So, interesting. I wonder if any further things will happen to this, but this is very much not the end, and we'll get into it. Alright, Activision Blizzard have settled at least one small part of their current woes, where earlier this week they settled a lawsuit with the US Equal Employment Opportunity Commission over alleged pervasive sexual harassment and discrimination. Now, this was a suit filed Monday with the Central District of California Court, and it was the culmination of a 3-year investigation into Activision Blizzard. It's kind of funny, you know, all of those investor lawsuits that are kind of saying, hey, us investors, it'd be nice if we knew some of these things. So, yeah, 3 years. Now, the EEOC notified Activision Blizzard of their findings on June 15th after launching this investigation in September 2018. Timings of which, of course, mean that J.Allen Brack would have been there as the leader of Blizzard while the whole thing was going on. I guess you wonder, you know, how much sort of filtered up from Jab to the big Activision. You know, I have to wonder. But yeah, then they launched what they've referred to as extensive conciliation discussions with Activision Blizzard, and in light of the recent allegations, of course, of the California Department of Fair Housing and Employment, should be noted that Activision Blizzard readily cooperated with the investigation. I'd imagine because they had no bloody choice. So, as for what's came of this, there's a settlement. Right. Reports were emerging last week that ActiBliz was basically in talks for a settlement with the EEOC, and they confirmed in a statement that they were. Activision Blizzard have published a summary of the agreement on their investor relations website. It goes into actually quite a lot of detail on the terms and the stipulations of the settlement, and mostly as good things. And the summary also does note that, unless otherwise noted in the agreement, the terms will be in effect for 3 years from its start date. So, what are these terms that Blizzard have agreed to here? Well, first up, they've established an employee restitution and compensation fund totaling $18 million. So, essentially, employees who have been wronged will now be able to claim, and through some sort of process that I don't understand, they will receive financial compensation for what's happened to them. And I have to imagine in a few of those cases that could be decently large. I mean, what happens for somebody who, you know, was genuinely passed up for promotion, let's just say, not in a fair manner, based on their performance. Perhaps when we think of the lost income there, maybe if that holds back their career in general, there could be decently chunky arguments to be made. Now that said, if any of this money doesn't end up going to people, then it will be divided between contributions for non-profits to support women in games and tech, and further investments in diversity and inclusion efforts at Activision Blizzard. They're also upgrading company policies, practices, and training, which we've basically heard of before, and this also includes a new performance review system that's designed to focus on equal opportunities. So I've got to wonder how that is designed, what actually makes that different. I don't know. I'm not in the corporate world. Moving on, they're engaging a neutral third-party equal opportunity consultant to ensure their ongoing compliance. Now, what's interesting here is you might just think, like Wilmer Hale, who like to bust unions for the rich. Well, this individual must be a non-employee who has been approved by the EEOC. So then, will the EEOC end up, being okay if it's a sort of Wilmer Hale type that is kind of seen as being a little bit of, I guess, the swamp of big business? Would the EEOC not be okay with that? Or maybe it turns out it's one of those situations where somebody who was in the EEOC then ends up going into law, and, it's all just cozy bullshit, because we are talking about government things after all, and, we have to be skeptical of them. Now, they're also going to report their findings directly to the EEOC and Activision Blizzard, and hire an internal EEO coordinator with relevant experience in gender discrimination, harassment, and retaliation to assist the third-party consultant with ensuring compliance. So basically, right, 18 mil to compensate people, update the internal policies, and then people coming on board who report directly to the EEOC to actually hold their feet to the fire, ensure that they actually do keep up with this. Of course, we got another, statement from Bobby, right, who says that there's no place anywhere at the company for all of these terrible things, and he's sorry that anyone had to experience this, and that he remains unwavering in his commitment to make it one of the world's most inclusive, respected, and respectful workplaces. Which is rather funny, because, EA Games haven't been going around making statements like this, and they seem to have actually done pretty okay as far as things have went. They've not been implicated in massive scandals about these things. Andrew Wilson has talked about them having to get rid of people and how they take this stuff seriously. And, I'm sure bad things have happened at EA Studios, but, there's been no big story. There's been no super big pervasive problem, it would have seemed, at EA. So it's the sort of thing where it's like, you see Bobby say that, and it's like, really, Bobby, were you just not aware of what was going on? Because if you did have this unwavering commitment, maybe a bit more like how some of EA have been, then maybe none of this would have happened in the first place, and the evidence of your unwavering commitment to all of these things would have been that these bad things didn't happen. Therefore, this case didn't happen, and we wouldn't be talking about it right now. I wonder. Now, he does go on to thank the EEOC for its constructive engagement as they work to fulfill their commitments. Now, the agreement is something that's actually been published in full, and Activision Blizzard have enthusiastically linked people to the full agreement. It's the sort of thing where, sometimes these settlements things, they can remain a little bit hush-hush and all of that, but I think ActiBliz, they've agreed to the settlement. So the EEOC are probably happy enough with what's being done, or at least think that they have the structures in place to really slam ActiBliz if they sort of slip at any of these things. And I guess that because of that, there is quite a commitment that ActiBliz now has to hold themselves to, and being very public about that is probably one of the better ways to, address the reputational damage. Now, I'd say a really good way would be to think about some of the better ABK employee advocacy groups' suggestions, some of their demands, and maybe think about those forced arbitration agreements. I think if that was something that changed, then yeah, maybe actually you would see more people begin to come around. But it's kind of hard to see those going, isn't it?
Yeah, one of the things I think to keep in mind for doing this is, or for going through this story, is that the EEOC is federal. Mm-hmm. The DFEH from California are likely to go significantly harder, like they did with Riot back in the day when, because you said that earlier, that was a $10 million settlement for a class action, and then the DFEH went, no, our objection will block this in court because this should be closer to $400 million overall. Obviously, this hasn't happened because they have successfully settled, but the DFEH are currently in with it anyway. So this is likely like the very, this is basically the first shot of a barrage that's likely to come down on Activision Blizzard. But I think it's a kind of thing where this is just going to be mild.
Yeah.
So I actually looked up while you were saying there what the how much money employees are likely to get, and the average retaliation sort of compensation is about $40,000.
Right.
Which isn't really all that much if you think about it, but then I imagine that's average across all of employment, but salaries in this place will likely be generally higher.
I guess that's the thing to remember. $40,000 is a hell of a lot of money in, the vast majority of the world.
Yeah.
Here in Belfast, Northern Ireland, it would be a hell of a lot of money here. It does not seem like it is as much of a hell of amount of money in California, at least with perhaps the cost of living if you are somebody who is located in and around the Blizzard campus, so that you can sort of effectively work there.
Yeah, even if you think about it from the perspective of how Blizzard pay compared to Riot, $40,000 wouldn't turn your Blizzard salary into a Riot salary at the end of the day.
No.
So it doesn't seem like that much. So I imagine
$80,000 might.
Yeah, so I imagine it'll be a little bit higher. But another bit of flavor just to kind of see what actual complaints this stuff is likely to be about. The EEOC most successfully get claims through on the basis of retaliation. At about 55.8% of all charges are based on retaliation.
Right.
Then about 31.7% are based on sex. So it's that kind of thing where a lot of the successful charges here and the successful compensation will likely be very obviously proven bits of retaliation. So that's likely what that's going to be overall. Which means this is one small part of the overall puzzle of employee mistreatment. And that's just a little bit of flavor on the 18 million. Doesn't seem like an awful lot in the grand scheme of things, because it is only a small part of what's actually gone wrong overall.
Yeah, and I think what you said about it being a barrage is a big thing, because you gotta look at everything through the lens of optics and spin, right? Mm-hmm. So Activision Blizzard being very, very much like, hey, look at this! This is great! Look what we've done! Yeah, they obviously stand to gain, and 18 million is really not a lot of money for them. Mm-hmm. So that does make you think that this is them just trying to get all the good news that they can, and then, as you said, yeah, when DFH comes in, it could be a little bit more rough. When the SEC comes in, that's where it could start to get extremely interesting. And one of the things we were talking about the SEC case, and I should probably just add it here for everyone in the news channel audience, because we were chatting about this on the stream that we do over on our Warcraft channel, and one of the things to remember is the SEC. Look, DFH, they can fine you, they can do a lot. The SEC can come in with handcuffs. Mm-hmm. The SEC are the group who can, just do that. Take it's a bit slightly different example, but Elizabeth Holmes. She's in a lot of trouble right now for Theranos, along with Sonny, her I think other half. I don't know if they split or anything. I forget. That whole big scandal. That's the SEC who are dealing with that. At least I'm pretty sure in part. So when it comes to funny business from the CEO types, this is where they can actually be on the hook personally. So the SEC is something it's really quite big. California State Department. Just that they were 10 million, now throw it out 400 million. And okay, I suppose we don't actually know what ended up coming from that.
No.
But it's probably something more than 10 million.
Yeah, of course.
Right? So all of these things are going to be rough. There's definitely rough days ahead for Activision Blizzard. It's hard to prove these things have got, it's just hard to prove when they'll get better. Here's a good example. I actually don't know anyone at Riot, but I do know people who have had colleagues that have went to Riot. And, from them, I have heard that Riot has generally been, I guess, not what you would have thought based on the past and based on that big drama. So perhaps they have had some degree of change. Now, I'm not very embedded with any Riot community, so I don't really know how that actually came across to the players. And maybe if they were able to get a little bit more faith in Riot, or how that happened. But I suppose those are some of the questions we've got to ask, some of the things we've got to think about. How does this actually trickle down to the staff, to the players? Another thing then is staffing. which we may as well have a quick chat about here because I don't really know what other video we could fit it into. It's probably not its own topic, but as you guys know, Warcraft channel is a big thing that we do. And one of the things we've noticed as a part of running that channel is a lot of hiring. I think, is it the Quest team on World of Warcraft has got so many roles open.
Yeah.
And decently regularly we are seeing Blizzard employees tweeting, you know, here's an image, here's a whole bunch of roles, we're hiring associate through senior. And that just makes you think they're staffing up. Now, the World of Warcraft team, let's just say, based on the size of that game, it is way smaller than you would think, from what I understand, right? So they're clearly trying to staff up because I think they've realized that for 2 expansions in a row, was it a day late and $1 short? You know, it's like they have not been able to make enough content. And you're just kind of thinking, like, why is this as Asmongold would say, a multi-dollar company? It just doesn't make any sense. So in this current environment, this is something that probably should rattle the faith of investors because, you know, if you're hiring an engineer role, and I don't want to, like, totally play into the myth of the 10x engineer, but from both being in, like, we both have engineering backgrounds, like, I assume you agree, but, like, a 10x engineer is a fucking thing.
Oh yeah, of course, definitely is.
Yeah, like, that's just how it is. I'm not a 10x engineer.
No, me neither, but yeah.
But you see a 10x engineer, now a 10x engineer, it's kind of like, you know, oh, it's just one of those engineers who they're so good they'll do the work of 10. And, you know, sometimes there's a bit of mythos there. But look, I've worked with a few people, seen a few people. That shit's pretty damn true. Those people are worth their goddamn weight in gold. Now, if you are the next big 10x engineer, and there's a job open at Riot, and there's a job open at Blizzard, I mean, I hear Blizzard is trying to fix their low compensation problem, but even at that, which one are you going to go to, considering the drama going on at Blizzard? So the amount of damage that this is going to do to their ability to hire top-tier talent, it's going to be kind of rough.
Yeah, I mean, even to use one specific example of what they're hiring for, and they've been doing, I mean, obviously, I don't know how quick these roles get filled in this kind of place, but they've been hiring an associate game director for a while. You would imagine that with an IP like World of Warcraft, you would have people jumping, you know, going so far out of the way to apply for associate game director on that. But I guess, I mean, obviously that's maybe a little bit much.
You're certainly running into a problem where WoW has alienated a lot of the people who really liked core old WoW. And, I mean, frankly, with the current overall, like, kind of Destiny 2ification of the game, but, like, it's more niche than Destiny 2 because, you know, the fundamentals of Destiny 2 are more fun. Because it's like, you know, the shooting is, you know, you're just so, like, connected to your character, right? The effects and all of that. I just don't see that being the most attractive thing in the universe, right? Now, that said, I also imagine that associate game director for WoW is a big thing, and it probably would take a while to hire somebody for that.
Yeah.
So they could be waiting, they could be weighing up, you know, an external versus an internal hire, or somebody could actually be, you know, there, but they're on their probation period. Because that is the thing with these companies. You could have a 60-day probation period. I mean, a good example, if you want to think about on YouTube, you know, a new member of staff in Linus Tech Tips. They are completely invisible to the audience until their probation period's over. And I forget how long that is. Maybe it's 60 days, 90 days, whatever. But there could be something like that. But yeah, it's just something to think about. You know, it's you got to think about the individual people who make up these big complex systems. And is an individual person really going to feel like Blizzard Entertainment is the group to work at? And I think, yeah, as players, we would all like Blizzard to be fixed up, for it all to be good, and for the best talent in the world to, I mean, you know, maybe we want the best talent in the world, just kind of making their own companies, making cool new things. Of course. You could probably say that, but in a way, you know, if you like World of Warcraft, what do you want? You want the best motherfuckers on the planet in there making that game, to make it as good as it can be so you and your friends can have fun. And as players, I think that's what we want, and it is harder to see that happen, or at least they will have a harder time doing that in this current environment.
Yeah, and I think to bring it back around to the legal situation at hand, there is one thing that I wanted to just say about all of this, and I think you bringing up a better ABK earlier is a very good way to bounce off it, because they're dealing with legal problems. They're not dealing with actual problems, if you kind of get me.
Yeah.
Where they're doing this from a legal perspective. Obviously, they're relatively aligned in that the legal stuff is trying to solve the real problem, but ultimately it is, they're dealing with the EEOC and doing what EEOC want. They're doing what the Department of Fair Employment and Housing want. They'll be doing what the SEC want. But they still don't appear to be in contact with a better ABK, who are the employee group who are trying to make things better for themselves. So I think that's one important thing to keep in mind as we see the legal proceedings go through, is how much is this actually helping? Because I know it would be great for us to see, oh yeah, Bobby's been fined hundreds of millions. Get him, legal system, for all of this awful stuff they've let happen. But at the end of the day, it's the employee well-being that matters, and I think that's where to keep your eye on, I think, overall.
I think the final thing to set a little bit of tone and flavor is that I think Bobby's overall compensation this year is like $150 million. Now, I should say, to be fair to the CEO himself, a tiny percentage of that is salary. Most of that is in stock options. Maybe he has restrictions on how he can, use those stock options or whatever. But, we see this, and then you're like, well, what's the Bobster getting? And you're like, oh, net worth go woo. So yes, keep all those things in mind. I think a better ABK are a pretty active group, though. They are working with, I think union and stuff like that. So we shall see. I think if things don't make progress, a better ABK will let us know, and we'll be able to talk about that then. But there you go. That is this step. Do expect more to come. Thank you for listening in. I hope you find this to be useful, and we'll see you next time.
Magic is cool, and maybe we should try using that. Oh, quick
I'm gonna be honest, okay? Like, whenever I actually get into the game, if one of the realms, one of the factions is controlling everything, I'm just going to swap over to that faction.
Alright everyone, Diablo 2 Resurrected is out. This is Blizzard Entertainment's first major release since, well, everything went down with Blizzard Entertainment. Though of course this isn't really a project done by Blizzard Entertainment, it's done by Vicarious Visions, the same people who did the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 remaster, who, up until very recently, were not a part of Blizzard. They were a support studio of Activision Publishing, but of course they've now been absorbed into the Blizzard fold, where they're doing some work. So today we've got a few things. First, a quick little review roundup to see where the state of Diablo 2 Resurrected is, and then also a little bit of history repeating itself, which is very, very funny given what is happening, but of course quite frustrating for many of the game's players. As for the reviews, essentially they are unanimously positive overall, in that this is a pretty masterful and faithful bringing forward of Diablo 2 into the modern age, while still very much having Diablo 2 be Diablo 2. The art style looks like Diablo 2. They've not messed it up, basically. That's a lot of what we had already expected from a lot of the preview content, such as skill ups that was based on the alpha. Yeah, basically, if you liked Diablo 2 back then, or if you want to play a Diablo that's not Diablo 3 and actually see what 2 was, then this is absolutely fantastic. And I would want to specifically call out to you that they've done pretty great work on the controller options, which a lot of people are saying are quite fun in terms of just what they do for the control scheme and the general playability of the game. So that's a lot of what is going on. However, not always completely perfect.
Of course not.
While the broad take is that essentially this is all really quite excellent, the game in a few ways is not complete. So we should cover that. First of all, there is no ladder, and there will not be ladder until an undisclosed time. And based on what Rod Ferguson said, they want to make sure that the game is stable. Fair enough, but in a way it is, technically incomplete in that the ladder feature is not there. So to some people this will feel like more of a soft launch than, a full proper launch, which of course is unfortunate, but For a lot of people, I think they just want to go and play Diablo 2, and you can do that very well with this. And another odd thing is that the console version lacks lobbies and chat. So there's zero communications other than the party chat that is provided by the actual console, not in-game lobby chat. So that's essentially what's missing there. Dexterdo did come up with a few bugs.
Yes. That's one thing that I find interesting, because when Rod talks about wanting this game to be stable and ready for ladder, he did say at another point that there'll be no new features until it's stable, which means that, you know, they're focusing, they clearly know they have bugs to sort out, because like Dexterdo, like the headline of it does say, gruesome glory ruined by gnarled gameplay, which, you know, nice wordplay, etc, etc, but their point is that to quote them, there are a slew of irritating bugs that are likely to be fixed soon. As patches drop over time, we hope this sorts itself out, but at the moment they can be so game-breaking that they make you want to do diabolical things to your computer, which, you know, very nicely written, etc. But the point is, bugs. I mean,
yeah, I haven't
it's
heard
modern
of
game
as
launch.
much of that from like a few of the other reviews and sentiment, but that's, I mean, yeah, not good.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the sort of two ways to look at that is, one, it's not that common, those bugs. They sort of maybe had a bad run-in with it, or maybe, you know, the obvious thing of works on my machine. Maybe something was a little bit wrong with their game or something, you know. Or the other side is maybe they played it a lot more than a lot of other people encounter more bugs away. That's a possibility, just to kind of cover both sides of it.
Yeah,
but
it's also like in review style, there is, you know, top level, looking at the entire thing, what is this? And people basically like, this is a very faithful recreation. It really is Diablo 2, and we're very happy about that. Versus when you get into some of the weeds and you maybe find a few more of the issues.
Yeah, so it's like that. One of the things that I think with Diablo 2 Resurrected, more than any other remaster for the past while, the question has to be, why bother? And I think there's a little bit of that comes now, where it, you know, the game launches with no ladder, so why not just play, you know, the old game in a sense? It's not ready yet, so this is all just one big, you know, soft launch, which as we'll get into, you can kind of understand why this is the case, but it certainly feels bad for, you know, a big launch and everyone going, oh, let's go, oh wait, we don't really have anywhere to go, which is, to be fair, only for the people who want to play really, really hardcore on ladder, but for most people it's more likely fine, or at least it would be if not for
that. Yeah, that's basically it. This is, I think, a perfectly great release for most of the people who just want to hop in and do Diablo. But for the people who are doing ladder and are way, way, way more engaged in that side of ARPGs, they're obviously going to be like, well, okay, some of the things we want aren't exactly here.
Yep.
Now, that said, they have had a funny happen.
Of course.
And this is something that's been very frustrating for people. We all remember Error 37, don't we? With Diablo 3. Well, an issue has occurred while communicating with the game servers. Please check that you are connected to the internet and try again. Connectivity issues are back. It is very funny seeing the BNet support articles for both Diablo 2 and Diablo 2 Resurrected for their connection problems. Now, this ended up being quite whack, because there was day one issues with the servers getting pounded. Blizzard ended up having to do some unscheduled maintenance, taking them offline for a bit to sort things out, which seems like a major improvement for some, maybe not for others, because there are still loads of complaints of of server problems. And of course, there's no TCP/IP connectivity, so you're kind of relying on their servers.
Yeah,
you can't just do it directly.
Yeah, it's that thing that people always kind of get into, where, you know, obviously as a consumer you should expect this. This happened for every major game. To be pragmatic and realistic, just expect it. But at the same time, they're selling you a product saying it's ready now. This is when the game will be ready to play. And at no point in any of their marketing they say, you know, you may need to wait a week for server issues to sort out. They never say that. They always go, it'll be fine. We promise it'll all be good. And it never is, which is maybe part of a larger conversation at some point in time. But as far as it goes here, it's like they removed that connectivity and now people are having a bad time. And it's like, sure, maybe you're just justified in the security reasons that you've removed it, but at the same time, again, why people could go play Diablo 2 2000 now online with each other, no problems, but they can't play the remastered version.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, yeah, just funny to have happen, especially for Diablo, where it happened with Diablo 3. Now, what this has meant for some people is character creation has not been a thing. Rollbacks, people losing progress, Now, what's interesting there is we can get into that in a little bit, because it doesn't seem like there's supposed to be any progress lost, but there are still some people tweeting about it, so we're not 100% sure on what's going on there. Now, Rod said, while we're digging into the online issue, could I perhaps interest you in some offline play? Now, this is a bit of a funny tweet that is, of course, referencing Error 37, because Error 37 just meant you couldn't play Diablo 3, because you needed to be online to play it in single player, and we all had that fun experience of playing D3 in and around launch, getting lag in a single player game. And that felt very silly. So, it's great that you can go and do some offline play. However, for a lot of people, they want to play with their friends. So for them, it's obviously not going to be ideal, but absolutely, this is a great example of definitely do an offline mode.
Yes.
Because imagine how much less bad Error 37 would have been if there was an offline mode in Diablo 3. And then you maybe think, well, did this have anything to do with how they were running the auction house, or any of those other parts, of how D3 was actually constructed. So that's a good thing about D2, that the servers can go and get completely screwy, but you can still play in offline.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we've been having the same conversation as gamers for like 15 years now. No, maybe not 15, but like at least 12, 13, 14 years now. Where it's just, please put an offline mode in. Because I think the same happened to a couple of other ARPGs that come to mind. Like Torchlight 3 was destroyed a little bit early on. It did eventually happen offline, I believe, but what was the other one? There's another game that basically, another RPG. Was it Wolcen maybe? But whatever it was, it had awful server problems.
It was Wolcen.
And you're like, just put an offline mode in. You can do what you want in terms of limited, because obviously the thing here is that it's a real problem for people who want to play crossplay. Cross-save Diablo, because it's out on consoles, it's out on PC, it's out on, etc. So if you want to play on console and also PC, you have to play online, because that's how cross-save functions.
Yeah.
You can't just, copy over your save file or anything like that. So that's the sort of thing. But I think, ultimately it's a complete net gain to have an offline mode. So just do it. And, they did. So
yeah. So in terms of follow-up, Rod and the team have actually been doing a fantastic job of communicating with the players, and this is what we want to see. Adam Fletcher saying they're looking into the issue of characters not appearing. Rod saying that they've had tons of players online, which is great, but it's been a challenge for the servers that has surpassed the testing. Now, I assume that is referring to the various different, the public tests that they did for this game, and it's interesting that that's a public test of the game for free. Well, the actual paid product seems to be vastly getting more people in, so perhaps that's some sort of early indicator that a lot of people are jumping into this game.
Sure.
So yeah, he said that they know many people are still affected, they're adding more capacity, and they'll keep on doing that until things are in a better place, and that may mean more server resets, restarts, and he's talking about more of them, and just generally keeping the community abreast of what's going on.
Yeah, that is not something I think we've come to expect from larger companies a lot of the time. I think a lot of them are getting better at it, but the fact that the EP of the Diablo franchise
Wow, you guys actually made a tier list for all the WoW races. Alright, so guys, today we are going to do the tier list for all of the playable races in World of Warcraft. So how should I rate them? Before I get into it, how should I rate them? Because should I rate them based off of their lore, their effectiveness, or whatever? Their coolness, their race, that's boring. The racials will be, alright, looks and racials and storyline, okay? So for trolls. Trolls are the shittiest race in World of Warcraft. They're complete trash. Every single time that the story advances is whenever the trolls get fucked in the ass. They are the dumbest race in the game. And because of that, I'm going to give trolls a B. Trolls are going to go right to a B, alright? So that's pretty much where I'm at. And Yeah, that I think does make sense. Now, obviously, let's go over here and we're going to look at these blood elves or high elves, because we have to specialize. Let's just say they're blood elves, okay? So blood elves are basically crackheads that are addicted to the Sunwell magic, and Kael'thas is their dealer, and then finally that guy got overthrown, and now they're just kind of doing their own thing. So I'm going to put blood elves. I'm going to say blood elves are... I'd say an A. I think blood elves are an A. This seems pretty accurate to me, guys. What do you think? Yeah, this seems very, very good to me. All right, let's go ahead and we'll look at the other ones. Now, the next one are the goblins. I do think the goblins are... I do really like the goblins. As I said, I really enjoy the storyline of the goblins. They're really funny. They're interesting. They're cool. I think goblins are... I think goblins are somewhere around like the B range, the B to C range. So I'll put goblins at a high C for now, okay? Yeah, goblins are going to be at a high C. Now we have Pandaren. Now let me go ahead and be completely honest with you here, okay? I have literally no understanding of how the Pandaren storyline works. I have no idea of what happened in the Pandaren storyline. I don't know if... I don't know anything about it. And you know what else? I don't care to. Pandarens, pandas, should have never been in the game. Pandaria should have never been in the game. It is ridiculous, the fact that they even considered doing this. Like, it is so stupid. It is the dumbest idea I've ever heard in my whole life. They're complete trash. They should have stayed as an April Fool's joke. Now, the Dark Iron Dwarves. The customization for the Dark Iron Dwarves, I think, is really, really fucking cool. I really like Dark Iron Dwarves, and I think they are probably one of the... they're probably one of the coolest races out there in terms of the way they look. The racials are really cool. And I like BRD. It's my favorite dungeon. Classic WoW BRD is my favorite dungeon of all time. So I'm actually going to put the Dark Iron Dwarves. I'm going to be real with you guys. I'm going to put the Iron Dwarves at an A. And I think, honestly, they could even go up to an S. Like, they could 100% go up to an S. Yeah, these are really, really good. Now, the Kultiran. I think the Kultiran are fucking stupid. I think the entire idea of the Kultiran is fucking stupid. I think it was just purely a plot device to add in a new type of human into the game. I think the females are... a little bit too chubby. It's not necessarily ideal, but it's okay. They're very thick. Yeah, they're very thick. And at least for them, you can say they're big boned. Because if I remember right, the logic in this is that the Kultiran literally mated with Drust, right? And that's why they're bigger? I think that's the story. Isn't that they just live in America? No, dude, that's not it, man. Kultirans are NA. Yeah, so this is... So these are the, this is the American race, and wow. All right, I'm going to put Kultirans as a D. I think Kultirans are kind of stupid. Now, Lightforged Draenei. Let's go ahead and we'll move on to the next one. So, the Lightforged Draenei, I think we're going to do... We'll do this here, and then we're going to do this here. So, basically, they're fighting the Army of the Light. It just seems ridiculous and stupid. It's such a... It's basically just a reskin of the existing characters. Like, I don't know. It just was boring to me. There was nothing new about them. They were just trash. Like, it was such a random race to add into the game. Like, the High Mountain Tauren made sense. The other ones made sense. Like, the Void Elves made sense. The Nightfallen kind of made sense, I guess. But the Lightforged Draenei were like, oh yeah, these are Draenei, but they're yellow. Give me a fucking break, man. Give me a fucking break. Void Elves didn't make sense. You're right, they didn't. Yeah, Void Elves did not make sense. I thought they were dumb. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna rate Void Elves, but I think Void Elves are a little bit cooler. So we're gonna put Void Elves at like a B. Because I do like the way they look. They do look really, really cool, okay? Yeah, they do look really cool. Okay, the racials are OP. I think the racials are really cool. Now, High Mountain Tauren. I'm gonna be honest here. I think High Mountain Tauren are fucking awesome. I love High Mountain Tauren. High Mountain was... Stormheim aesthetically was my favorite, but High Mountain was my favorite storyline in all of Legion. And it's not even close either. It was so cool, and the paintings on them are so cool. It gave them an opportunity to add back in the old... Remember the totems that the Tauren would carry around in Warcraft 3 and they'd beat the fuck out of people with them? Dude, I used to love... I loved High Mountain. I love the High Mountain Tauren. I think the charge thing that they have is good. Everything about High Mountain is dare I say it, lit. I'm going to give High Mountain Tauren an A, or sorry, an S. I really like the High Mountain Tauren. They're one of my favorite races. I think they're really, really cool. Now, the Mag'har Orcs. The Mag'har Orcs, the reason why I like them is it's kind of like a weird reason why I like them, is because they gave you all of the orc. They gave you all of the orc customization options that you always wanted. Like, you always wanted to have an orc with, like, the fucking handprint on his face. Like, fucking the Uruk-hai, or, yeah, the Uruk-hai in Lord of the Rings. You always wanted to have an orc that had the hairstyle of Grommash. They added that in with these characters. And because of that, I'm going to give the Mag'har Orcs an A. I think they're an easy... It's the easiest A that's ever been easy. Humans are a D. Well, let's see. All right, so we got humans. Now, humans are effectively malformed Vicryl that are literally a curse to the Vicryl race because of how weak they are. In my opinion, I'm gonna give the humans... I don't know. I mean, I think I'm gonna put them at like a C. I'm gonna say humans are like a C, guys. What do you think? I think they're cooler than the goblins, but they're not as cool as the Void Elves. I think actually, I don't know. Maybe the Void Elves should go down to a C. What do you think? Yeah, I think I'm gonna move the Void Elves down to a C. Because they didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Okay, so let's see here. Now we have the Nightfallen. The Nightfallen...
Yeah, what do you
This
want?
might be an unpopular opinion, okay?
Got the best
But
deals
I think the
anywhere.
Nightfallen were fucking stupid.
Yo,
It made literally no sense to me that they got added into the Horde after all of their main people that they're the closest like relation to are Night Elves, and then they just went to the Horde. I think the Nightfallen were just an excuse to give Horde Elves again. And I'm tired of that. And I think they're stupid. I think they look stupid. I think they act stupid. I think they are stupid. Everything about them is stupid. And I'm gonna actually put them... There's nothing that can be worse than a panda, right? But if there was anything to even be close, it would absolutely be the fucking... the Nightfallen. Or Night... whatever the fuck, dude. They're hot as fuck. No, they're Garbo. They are absolute Garbo, man. Pandas deserve an S? Yeah. If S was the worst, if S stood for shit, then yes, they deserved an S. Alright. Next.
Hey there. Hey there. Safe travels.
Good day to you. See you around.
Hey there. See you around.
You need something?
With you.
How are you?
Hello. Greetings. King's honor, friend. Safe travel.